Zoning Board of Appeals, you're live on the air and you're being recorded.
Okay, thank you, Michael and LTV. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 24th, 2021 Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. This evening is a public hearing. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 public hearings, I believe. Before we get to those, we're going to jump out of order. Board members, if you don't mind, we just have an issue, and we have Eric Shantz here from the Planning Department, and we are going to briefly discuss the Emergency Services Communication Facility at Springs Fire Department at 179 Fort Pond Boulevard, Springs, tax map number 300-52-2-18.2, and specifically we are going to just touch on the emergency services, the draft environmental impact statement, and as well Eric's letter to the planning board dated August 12th, 2021. Eric, I don't know if you want to give for the public maybe kind of an introduction of why we're discussing this briefly, if you would.
Sure.
Great. Good evening, Eric.
Hi. Eric Shantz from the Planning Department.
Maybe I'll swear you in just for the heck of it. Just, I mean, it's a public hearing. Eric, if you please, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
So just to remind the board, there's an application for an 180-foot tall monopole at the Springs Fire Department. The planning board has declared lead agency and has made a positive declaration under SECRA, which means an environmental impact statement will be required. The draft scope was submitted to that board and they've discussed it. That is basically an outline of what the environmental impact statement will include. You as an involved agency have an opportunity under SECRA to offer comments about the draft scope, changes, additions, anything of that sort. We have reviewed it. We made a couple of recommendations, namely that alternatives be considered, but basically the scope is pretty complete based on what the EAF said. So you guys should have a discussion, and basically it would be to give comments to the planning board.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. I'll just start off. My comment, Eric, is thanks for your work on this. I know the board has read all of this thoroughly. And my comment is basically that I agree with your letter to the board, Eric, dated August 12, 2021, and the suggestions and additions and issues for discussion that you suggest be incorporated into the draft environmental impact statement. Again, thank you for your work on this. I just completely agree with you. I have nothing personally further to add to the conversation other than that I respectfully request that the planning board take those comments of the August 12th letter into consideration. Roy?
I agree with you.
Terry? Any comments, Terry?
Yeah, I agree. I just wanted to make my usual statement that, in terms of human health and public safety, that I hope that gets enough weight. Hopefully, that this communication gets done somewhere. It's a serious issue. Other than that, I agree. Memo.
Thank you, Terry. Tim?
I also agree with Eric's memo and have nothing else to add.
Okay, thank you. I agree with the recommendations in the memo. I'd like to see what we get out of that in the final report comes in, so that we can get the what's incorporated and how it's incorporated. I think there's a sensitivity here that's reflected in the reaction in the community that we all have to take a very close look at. Being incorporated. So I agree with the point that you made.
Okay.
I would, just to make, I'm sorry.
Just a question about with this coverage maps for cellular services. When was that reviewed? Was that done during a high peak time? Or?
Well, it would be the coverage that the cell provider is giving, I know what you're asking. You're saying, if there's a lot of people there and they're drawing a lot of bandwidth. I don't know, I'll say that I don't know the exact answer to that. I know that there is a standard process that RF engineers use when they produce coverage maps for, to give you an indication of a reliable cellular service. That's probably something that would need to be clarified in the technical aspects of the document. But, we are asking for that information. As long as that's asked for at this point in time, the planning board or the zoning board can ask for additional information when the draft environmental impact statement is submitted. So there will still be a chance to have a clarification of that, but I can't really give you that answer because I'm not an RF engineer, so I don't want to tell you the wrong thing.
It'll be similar to the maps that we saw probably at the.
Yeah, from Cityscape. I did want to mention though, as part of the environmental impact statement, the applicants will be considering alternatives, both alternative sites and alternative heights on this site. It is a possibility that they will not be back to this board. So if they do propose an alternative that does not require variances, obviously, from the fall zone requirements especially. So they may not be back to this board. That is a possibility. I think that that's probably unlikely just due to the needs of emergency services communication and the height, the height that they need to get a signal and the size of the property. But I just wanted to make you aware that, there is a possibility that you actually won't see this again. But as an involved agency at this point in time, you certainly, the planning board is going to discuss, needs to adopt a final scope this coming Wednesday, the 1st. Their deadline is the 20th. That scope will be provided to this board. It will outline, again, all the contents of the draft environmental impact statement. So you will receive that. And then once that document is prepared by the applicants, it will also go to you. Usually environmental impact statements are rather lengthy documents. So, but you will have the opportunity to review that and to offer comments to the planning board, whether it be asking for additional information based on what was the contents of that, or even recommending alternatives or weighing in on the content of that document. So just letting you know that this isn't, your last bite at the apple, so to speak. And then also, I think it's important to say for the public that, once the scope is adopted, again, the next step is that the applicants bring that document to the planning board as the lead agency. There will be a public hearing that is mandated under SECRA for the draft document. There's, I shouldn't say that. There's the lead agency has an opportunity to do it for the draft document. I believe that the board is going to want to do that. They are mandated to do that for the final environmental impact statement. So there's at least 2 other public hearings that are going to be held by the planning board alone. So I just, seeing as if anyone from the public is interested, I just want to let them know that this point in time, we're just talking about the contents of that document, but the public will have a chance to hear about what the contents of that are in the future.
And all this will accommodate multiple carriers, right? I know some carriers are rolling out the technology a little differently.
Yes, yeah. The applicants actually, when they presented this proposal, were not including wireless. It was just for emergency services communication. I won't go through the whole conversation, but it came up that almost certainly there will be wireless. There's federal laws that basically make that inevitable. The applicants, to their credit, have said through the draft scope, through this document, that they will be considering that. They'll consider the impacts of it, the aesthetic impacts, the health impacts, the RF impacts, all of that. So that is included and will be included in the environmental impact statement.
I'll just make one more point or question. If, as we all know, one of the alternative sites may or may not be the Camp Blue Bay, the former Girl Scout camp, correct?
Right.
If that were to transpire, I'm sure that would be Fosnact as well. I'm not sure, but it could be with regard to secret. And this would be probably difficult for you to ascertain if that site were selected and moved forward on board. Would this site be superseded by that? Now, I know this is the applicants are the East Hampton Police Department, Spring Fire Department here, but could you just comment on that scenario?
Yeah, not necessarily.
Yeah.
And you might find with coverage needs that both sites, you might need varying heights of towers, and both sites might be beneficial. And I will say it is neither the zoning board nor the planning board's authority to choose one of the alternatives. What they're looking at is they're weighing the pros and cons of, one of the alternative sites, I should say. They're weighing, based on the information in the document, the pros and cons of the different alternatives proposed at this site at the fire department, considering whether or not any of those can meet the environmental standards that are required under SECRA. And then if they cannot, and there's an alternative that's demonstrated as better, then they will deny this application. It doesn't mean that the planning board or the zoning board of appeals gets to say, that's the best site, that's where this is going. It's either it's this application and whether or not, ultimately, whether or not to deny what's being proposed. And then if it is, then somebody else would have to propose something elsewhere. And then also, you know, the emergency services communications component of this is the discretion of the town board. It's town board, you know, it's town equipment that's paid for under resolution by the town board. So, you know, ultimately there is a decision to be made there too. But I just want to make that clear that it's not a matter of the planning and zoning boards picking where, you know, a communications node is going to be in Springs. It's getting an environmental impact statement, reviewing the contents of that document, saying whether or not what these applicants are proposing can meet the applicable standards, and then voting on that in the context of considering whether or not there are viable alternatives elsewhere in Springs. It's an important distinction that I'd like to make.
Yeah, that's great. That's why I wanted your comments there. Thank you, Eric. Any other comments or questions, board members?
I would have a question, Eric. Is there a timeline associated with when we can expect to see the DEIS completed, or I think?
Not necessarily. Once the draft scope is adopted, it is in the hands of the applicants. Again, environmental impact statements are large documents, so they have a lot of information in them. It routinely takes months and months to compile them. This isn't as complicated as some of the other documents I've seen. For example, the Sand Pit in Wayne Scott has a proposed sub 50 lot, service commercial, I should say commercial industrial subdivision. That's a very, very lengthy document that's being prepared currently. But there's a lot to consider in here, and there's a lot of information. So the short answer to your question is no. It is determined upon who the applicants hire and how quickly they can prepare this information.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we will move along now to our first public hearing of the evening. The applicant is Wes Goldie, and the lot size and location is 258,192 square feet at 136 Benson Drive, map number 9624, map of lot 1, minor subdivision of Hilda Smith, Montauk, tax map number 300-32-6-4.01. The description is to construct approximately 750 linear feet of fencing and allow a 108 square foot shed and 20 square foot outdoor shower to remain on a parcel of land containing freshwater wetlands. The relief sought here is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-4-20. Variances from 255-4-30. Within wetland setbacks of the town code and any other relief necessary. The following variances are required. 1, a variance of 87 feet to install the fencing 13 feet from freshwater wetlands where 100 feet is required. 2 and 3 variances of 15 feet and 15 feet are required to remain the shed, or the shed to remain. An outdoor shower to be constructed 85 feet from the wetlands where 100 feet is required. This is the zoning district here is A10 residence zone. The flood zone is X, and the secret class is type 2. And council, do we have a proper affidavit of service and posting?
We have an affidavit that the mailings went out on the 11th day of August. We also have an affidavit that the posting went up on the 11th day of August. So the paperwork appears to be in order.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, council. And this is in board member Berger's Montauk district. Terry, if you would, please.
Yeah, I could. This is the notice of posting. It was on the ground after the storm that we had, so just leaned it against the shrubbery. It was properly posted. And this is a shot. I'm turning that snippet of driveway on the left is the applicant's property, and when you're looking through that the wetlands and shrubbery. A lot of that is this huge conservation easement that is on the property, and that's looking down Benson Drive to Twin-West. And I turned around 180 degrees. This is what the Benson Drive ends right there, and then again, there's a lot of shrubbery, and through that is an area where there's possibly a common driveway that the applicant already has submitted to be done to change the driveway back. Just wanted to show you that area and how it ends. Next. These are a few of the houses across the street. Nice little neighborhood, quiet. And some of the affected neighbors across the street. Next. And that's a bigger shot down Benson toward the west. This is toward the west. Next. This is the applicant's driveway, and along the right side of that, it's the existing driveway. You can see there's the conservation easement here on the west and south, but I'm going to go up there and just take some shots of the different shrubbery and where that lawn for the proposed fencing runs. Next. This is a shot of the house in general. It's there today. You can see there's a lot of moving and sloping off. Next, I'm going to walk a little farther up in the driveway. Going next, there is a pole that you can see in the survey, a power pole. You can't see it here, so I'm going to go up to where we can see it. Next, Mike. And that's just an example of all the shrubbery and the conservation easement. Very undisturbed. Next. Okay, so now that's a power pole. The little thing sticking up kind of 1/3 from the left of that. That's actually the power pole that you see on the survey. It shows where the fence is going to run, is proposed to run along the property line. And you see how it relates to the rest of the house on the survey. Next. That's just a more distant shot. I'm walking up toward the back of the house where the pool area, the shed that's in question. Next. Now I've turned toward the south and just took another shot of all the shrubbery and undisturbed vegetation. Now this is the shed that's in question that needs variance and could be moved somewhere else on the property. And this is the existing pool fence that's proposed to be removed with the other fencing going in. And next, this is another shot of the pool, just shooting farther down, getting a better view of that. And you can see on the right portion of that, there's like some orange. It's another house that's through there, which I assume is on the other side of the common driveway easement area. See, it's very well protected right here. Next. And it's a shot of the side of the house, roughly in the area where where the shower is proposed to be. And next.
That's it. That's it, sorry.
That's this one? Oh, okay. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Any questions, board members, from the field report? Okay, do we have the applicant or the agent for the applicant? Good evening, Andy.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Andy Hammer. I'm actually pinch hitting tonight for Joe Halsey, who had an unavoidable conflict and is out of town tonight. So on the first two applications, I'm kind of filling in with him. I am familiar with this property. I worked with Wes many years ago when we were first considering the pool. If you look at the survey, it's striking how large this parcel is. Coupled with the fact that how well mitigated it is. In the 1994 subdivision, you can see that there's a scenic easement that encumbers obviously more than half of the lot. I think it's 180,000 square feet of the property is under conservation easement. It's been a very well maintained, non-encroached upon easement since the date of inception. This is an older house that long predates the 1994 subdivision. I think that's why the common driveway access wasn't over the common driveway. I believe that was part of the 1994, and he is proposing to move his driveway onto that to kind of get the driveway off of Benson Drive. As you can see, with this board, this was in front of the board, I think in 2013 for the pool, the administrative permit. And we're in front of you tonight seeking to basically close the loop on that. One of the things that's required that wasn't in part of that original application was the pool fencing and other fencing on the property. I think that might have been an oversight. Obviously the pool fencing is required to be around the pool. And if you look at the pictures Terry took, that was put up just to secure the pool so that there's no hazard to it. My client's position that I think most of you would agree with is if you look at the pool fencing where it currently is, it's not a very aesthetic component of overall a very unique and aesthetically pleasing site. So he's proposing to relocate the fencing more or less to the perimeter of the cleared zone on this property. That will have much less of an impact on his enjoyment of the smaller areas of the property that are actually part of his residential habitation, versus the preserved areas of the property. There's also the shed, which under the original permit was proposed to be relocated to a conforming location. It actually was relocated to the point that, they said, hey, we think this will aesthetically work. Basically, it kind of bisects the pool and has some symmetry on site. I think you could say that if you relocated an extra 15 feet from the wetlands, the siting might be awkward, but, that's not actually a variance standard, is the awkwardness of an appearance. What is a variance standard is a benefit to the applicant, outweighs a detriment to the general health, welfare, and safety of the town or general public, and the wetlands as well under our NSP regulations. This is a storage shed. It stores objects and things used by the pool. So obviously we think that its location that bisects the pool both is visually enhancing and consistent with the character of not only the neighborhood, but of what we're trying to protect on this property. We also think that it doesn't have any detriment to the wetlands. It was in a location that was less conforming. I think it was 70 feet from the wetlands. So we did increase the setback by 15%, which is more than 10%. And we propose to leave it where it sits now, where we think it is in a preferable location without any corresponding detriment. With respect to the fencing, obviously some of the fencing is required by pool code. You have to have a 4-foot pool enclosure with a gate, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing that's good about fencing in this location is that it really does protect the property from encroachments beyond the cleared area and the approved residential habitation of the property. So by fencing along those areas, you're going to be discouraging any future encroachment into either the conservation area or even outside of that line of clearing. So we think it makes a lot of sense. To my knowledge, fencing typically doesn't have any environmental, adverse impact. As a matter of fact, I think it might actually be a positive one. So once again, when we come in and request the relief, I'd say that the benefit in this instance seems to outweigh any detriment because I haven't really identified it. I would say that, this is a pretty unique parcel. It's already pretty well mitigated and preserved. And as a matter of fact, it's remarkably conforming to our current regulations with respect to wetland setbacks, et cetera. If you view it in light of the fact that this long predates zoning out here, it was built in the best possible location. The residential use is in the best possible location, and they did preserve the bulk of the property in its current state. And that obviously is serving a very good wildlife function. So I do think that, there's both common sense and also the variance standards support our application tonight. Other than that, I'm here and available to answer any questions. As I said, I'm not the proponent of this, the original proponent of the application. If there's something I don't know, I would just ask the opportunity to reach out to the parties that might know better than I do. But, on its face, it seemed like a fairly straightforward application.
Could I ask you to point out just for the record or for the public and our information, where the driveway is proposed with regard to the sanitary system there? Or do you know where they're proposing to relocate that?
I think I might have that on a drawing here.
The proposed driveway is right here. Oh. Oh, that's why. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong survey.
Yeah. Well, that would explain that. Absolutely.
That's all I needed. Yeah. And I guess thank you, Tim. I guess it's not an issue crossing over that sanitary line without fronting.
No, I believe that the new systems are, compliant for that purpose.
Any questions?
How the fencing? It does look like it could be a little bit better in those areas where it is 13 feet, up along the existing driveway.
Is this over?
Power was. No, the other way, down there, somewhere there. Yeah, that, on that side, it comes within 13 feet of the wetlands. Does look like it could be moved from back.
Well, I do think that, one of the benefits is that's also the conservation easement line along that, so it will preclude you, even 13 feet, it will give you an extra you'll get some additional protection from the location of the fence that won't be inside the conservation easement area, so you're gaining a little bit of extra protection there, a buffer. And it is along the cleared area of the property, the existing and approved clearing on the property.
What floor is the fence? It's going to be pool code fencing, 4 feet?
I think some of it is deer fencing. I believe it's 8 foot outside of the pool area. The pool area is required to be 4 feet, but I do believe some of this is required to be, up to 8 feet. I think the town code allows us.
Has it gone through the ARB already?
I don't know if it has been to the ARB yet but we would need their approval to increase the height, obviously, but, above 4. However, it is basically pool fence, there's nothing, it's see-through fencing at the end of the day. So, we'd be forced to comply with whatever the ARB requirements are. However, in general, their rules say that you can only do 3 sides of a property, no more than 50% enclosure. And we think that this will meet their, scratch that itch in terms of being compliant.
Just following up, Andy, on the question that was raised by Member Berger. The fences parallel down on the west side of the growth area of the lot, inside the easement. It's fairly irregular, and I know what it's trying to do. It's following what is now cleared space.
That's correct.
But certainly that could be straightened out a bit if we thought it was a bit of our advantage to see us get a little more room from the easement, from the wetlands. And so that irregular shaping there, I'm wondering if that couldn't be something that you could consider redirecting that and helping our distance. I can see that we're never going to achieve 100 foot from wetlands here, but to me, the fact that the irregular shape of it really doesn't work in your advantage for us. I know what it does. I was on the site. I can see what you're hoping to do. But as we point out by Member Bird, it all takes place down and around the growth that happens near that pole. And anyway, I think it's something that we might be asking you to consider here. Okay. Is there a way that we can straighten that line and help out for what we could do for that?
Okay, I would counter that just by saying, it's an easy thing to follow a curve when it's along the line of clearing in the field. So it's not like an illusory line. It's something that exists. The other thing I point out is, to my knowledge, I've never heard anybody assert that fencing in close proximity or far from, has implicates any detriment to the wetlands. There's no runoff. It's not an active use. And as a matter of fact, in some respects, it might even be better to have it fenced. So increasing the setback from 13 to 25 to 35 is somewhat, arbitrary in some respects, because, if the structure is okay, and I think this board has held in the past that it is okay, increasing the setback by, for mere numerosity doesn't actually impact the site or the alleged detriment to the property.
Anyone else? Any other board member questions? Andy? Okay, let's go to the planning department.
Good evening, Michael. Good board members, Mike Waller for the planning department.
Michael, good evening. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. Evening, board members. So this is a lot over on Benson Drive. As we've heard, it's had a number of approvals in the past, most recently the one for the pool as we see constructed here. A lot of the issues that are raised for tonight came as a result of the planning department inspection for the issuance of the CO related to that admin permit. As we mentioned, the shed was intended to be moved to a conforming location. There are conforming locations available, namely on the east side of the property, on the other side of the pool. Fencing wasn't part of that application. Arguably, you could put it right on the side of the coping. It wouldn't leave much of a workroom for, being able to work on the pool or get around the pool for that matter. So it wouldn't really be functional in that regard. So they did construct fencing on the property, and they are asking to remove that fencing and put in a less conforming and more extensive amount of fencing, effectively encapsulating the entire cleared area. I think the biggest form of mitigation on this project, and I wouldn't necessarily see this on a setback variance to this degree on many projects, is the amount of the parcel that is already under a conservation easement. However, that being said, as mentioned, there are more conforming locations for fencing on the property. It would allow for, potentially a better buffer to establish and less disturbance along that existing clearing edge. That being said, I don't have too much to add on the outdoor shower. It was constructed over a previously constructed deck. It looks like it's been there for, probably at the very least since the time of the review of the previous application. It was just never made part of that application. In that regard, everything's kind of just being swept up together to hopefully to close this out. But I don't have too much else to add.
Okay.
So, Michael, does that edge of clearing line, does that relate to specifically this project, or does some of that tie back into the permit that's currently on the property?
The edge of clearing, as far as I know, the edge of clearing has been there since the property was initially developed, and it's been maintained since that time. And that was prior to the 94 subdivision that allowed for the common driveway easement that would take access off of Montauk Highway.
Tim, any other questions, board members? No. Terry, any more?
Well, that edge of clearing, that can be moved too, on the side toward the westland?
Yeah, I mean, it anything can be improved.
You have any concern that, this is not part of the wetland, but on the opposite side against that common driveway easement, it looks like the fence goes right up to it?
Up to the driveway easement?
Yeah, on that one section.
It wouldn't generally be a concern of ours.
It's not relevant.
Yeah, that would be something maybe the building department, but as long as there's access to both properties and the easement is maintained, that they can have access to the other properties, it wouldn't be a concern.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Is there anyone in the public here who would like to speak on this application? No? Okay. Andy, you're good, right? Andy, any?
I did want to address one. Chairman, the only thing I wanted to address is Member Berger's suggestion that, yeah, you can improve the line of clearing. Well, you certainly can, and that's within the board's authority to mitigate adverse environmental impacts or propose, the better time that we should have been discussing, clearing the pre-existing rights, et cetera, was when you're constructing a pool. That's a much more major application than this is, and that was approved administratively. I don't believe it affected any of the clearing line. So, I think that to say that installing the fence can be mitigated by increasing the clearing, the uncleared portion of the property is a little, it's a little bit of a misnomer. That being said, if the board said, hey, we would rather have the line follow a different line, we are essentially ceding portions of the cleared area back. And, I'm sure we'd be willing to do that within reason, but that's a voluntary offer rather than a mitigative measure by the board. Other than that, that's all I have to say.
Okay.
Andy, just to clarify, so are you offering then to change the line of the fencing, or you're saying that the fencing, what you already offered to change was the?
No, and I think that Member Johan was talking about maybe bringing this line. Is this the? It's kind of like an awkward line. So what if the board allows, what I'll do is I'll see if we can figure out a way to make it a little bit more regular, which maybe would address some of your concerns. And, I'll offer to do that after speaking with the landowner who couldn't be here. He was here, but he had to leave for the storm and didn't make it back. But I'll talk to him, and we'll resubmit a proposal that will just, maybe straighten up some of that line and see if that meets the board's.
So you're asking for the record to be left open for an additional submittal?
Yeah, if the board would like it.
Procedurally, that's all I care about.
Okay. I mean, and that's really if the majority of the board says, yeah, they would like us to do it. Easy, please.
I understand Ed's comment, but I also understand, my view is I understand the applicant wanting to follow the edge of the clearing. I agree with what you said about that, Andy, and aesthetically straightening it out to make a straighter line where you'd have some lawn on the back side and on the front side. I don't know. So personally, I guess that's your call. My opinion is.
I agree with John. You're creating something that's more unusual than exists right now, and it's easy to follow in the field. But that's my position.
What do you all
Well,
feel?
in that one section, that's where it has the 3-foot variance. It could be improved upon to some degree.
Right.
So.
Jim, you want to do this as a resubmit, or what do you think?
My feeling is our obligation is to make the decision around the variance. If the variance can be improved, then that would be desirable.
Sandy, I don't see any. Oh, there he is. He's hiding. Well, Andy, I don't know. I guess, Roy, if you want to go back, and we can certainly leave the record open if you want to go back and speak with the client.
Yeah, let me talk to the client, just see if we could, now that that concern is identified. Let me talk to him, and either we'll make a resubmission or we won't. But I would just ask that it be long enough that I don't have to deal with it when Joel gets back. I don't know what that.
And you need a surveyor to do it as well.
Well, I think what we do is submit a hand sketch and just take an arc or the curve off or in some area. I think that would.
And then we could make a condition that would.
Yeah, exactly. Something equivalent to that.
How much time do you need, Andy?
Andy.
You can give me 10 days, maybe 2 weeks.
Give you 2 weeks?
Yeah, 2 weeks, perfect.
To September 7th?
Okay, great.
Great. Okay, thank you, Andy. And I guess there's no one in the public, so Terry, if you want to leave the written record and close the public.
Okay, for 136 Benson Drive, West Goldie. Mount Park, tax map 300-32-6-4.1. Close public hearing and leave the written record open until September 7th. For insufficient information from this.
I concur.
I concur as well. Thank you. Terry, Michael.
Yeah, there's another
Andy.
one before you.
Good evening. Okay, we will move on to our next scheduled public hearing this evening, and that being, the applicant here is Lawrence Chaffetz, and the lot size and location is 7,552 square feet at 56 Osprey Road, map of Montauk-on-the-Sea, filed September 1955, file number 2438, Amagansett tax map number 300-131-07-02. Description is to construct 180 square feet of gross floor area dormer additions to allow 150 square feet of decking, 2 sheds totaling 75 square feet, 56 square foot spa, an outdoor shower to remain, and install a sanitary system on a parcel of land containing beach vegetation. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit, NRSB pursuant to 255-4-20 and variances from 255-11-10, table of dimensional regulations, and 255-11-72D, pyramid of the town code, and any other relief necessary. The following variances are required. 1, variance of 2 feet is required to allow the shed to remain 8 feet from the side yard western lot line where 10 feet is required. 2, a variance of 8 feet is required to allow the hot tub to remain 12 feet from the side yard western lot line where 20 feet is required. 3, a variance of 6 feet is required to allow the hot tub to remain 14 feet from the rear yard southern lot line where 20 feet is required. 4 and 5, variances of 14.1 feet and 1.9 feet are required to allow the east and west dormer additions respectively to extend beyond the town's relative pyramid regulations. 6, a variance is required to allow a third-story addition where 2.5 is a maximum number of stories permitted. This is in a B residence zoning district. The flood zone here is AE flood zone elevation 10, and the secret class is type 2. And council, do we have a proper affidavit of service and posting?
I have an affidavit that the mailings went out on the 11th day of August, and also an affidavit that the posting went up on the 11th day of August. So the paperwork appears to be in order.
Okay, thank you, council. Board member Johan didn't have enough work to do at Montauk, so he wanted to be pinching in on this one, Ed, thank you. If you please, Ed, with your field report.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. In the first place,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can all of you speak up just a little bit? I know it's hard with your mask, but
Yeah.
it's really hard to hear. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Can the volume of our microphones be turned up? That would be better.
Thank you.
Is that possible?
Mike, I don't know.
Excuse me, Chair, no, the volume cannot be turned up. You just need to speak more into your mics, that's all.
Okay. Sure. Go ahead. Please.
okay, so here's the posting, set at the base of the driveway on us, right? Next. Here I'm looking east, and you get an idea what Osprey, the subdivision which we have made cases in, and it's a very sensitive area. We see that road is fairly straight and our houses along it, well developed. Next. I'm looking back west now, and again, the road continues out to the subdivision. Next. Now I'm standing there looking directly at the house in question, the applicant's house, and I'm looking down the driveway, and you get an idea of the basic configuration of the building and also its distance from the road. Next. So taking a look here, I'm looking slightly to the east, and you can see a house from that same spot standing in the driveway, the neighboring house. Just sitting there, it's a sizable structure, and it sits there. You'll see the property lines quite closely with the road further next. I walked down along the east side of the house, and you can see the deck, and some of this deck is in question. The hot tub sits up in the top corner of the deck. You see the gas tank that services the hot tub there. Behind it to the south is another imposing structure. Again, we'll see it a little bit later, but the property lines here are very tight. There's lots of very well developed in terms of the size of the structures that are not being built there. Next. Again, I just backed up to give you an idea of the scope of that house from a different angle. This is to the south of that, looking towards the ocean. Next. Now I've gone down a little bit further to the back corner of the lot. There are some stakes there. It shows where the corner is. I'm standing over the corner stake of this lot, looking back at the house. So I'm at the southeast corner of the lot, and I'm looking back, and you can see here, it's got a sizable roof mass, of course, and you can see the decks and how they've been built and how they've been constructed. Next. So I've turned from that same spot, and I'm looking basically due north, and you can see the house that's directly to the east of the applicant's home, and there's some vegetation between the two. And again, it's a little hard to tell here, but again, these houses are very tightly bunched together. Next. I walk down to the far end. I'm on the west end of the southwest corner of the property. I'm standing over a stake, and if you look and you can focus a bit, you'll see a white stake that's over the corner property. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Michael. There. So I'm really looking right down the property line between the two. So you can see their decks to the left from the applicant, and you can see the roof line for the house that I pointed out to the south. Next. From that spot, now I've turned a little bit and looked right at the structure. Again, we have some height conditions to discuss here, and you get some idea of the formidable nature of the structure here. standing as I am in possibly the lowest spot looking back up, but I am in the southwest corner of the lot. Next. I wanted to get an idea of the vegetation looking through here and between the building. It's been noted in the plan, the sensitive nature of the area. We've had a number of applications from this subdivision, and we've always expressed some concern. You can see here what is established, and that there's a natural dune contour to much of what surrounds all of these houses. This one in particular. This is a house that at the other end of it, that the house is to the south. There's some work going on right now. That house is I'm standing right on the property line. I turned myself around, looked to the south. And again, it's a fairly imposing structure there, which I assume passes pyramids, but it couldn't do very much. Next. Again, this is from my back to that southern house. Just wanted to get another shot of the house from a couple of angles. Next. Again, I'm looking back towards this deck. We're going to get closer to the deck, and backwards is the shed that's there. And I'm on the east side of the house at this point. Next. Now I've just turned and I'm looking back to the west. Next. This is the shed that's been noted. The shed is sitting on the east side of the house. There's a staircase that leads up to a deck that has the hot tub, and there's also a slight walkway that takes you around to the front. It's a pathway, not a walkway. Next. Here I've just gone up a couple of steps so I can get a shot of the hot tub. The hot tub has been noted. It's requiring variances. You can see that the house to the south, I pointed out like the property lines, and the CAM points out what the actual distances are. But it sits well off in the corner here, and so that's why it's a subject of our discussion. Next. Looking back at this house, I didn't quite get what I wanted, and it's starting to get a mass of what it was. Next. And again, this is just a shot of the house, and then I'm pulling that back out of the darkness. I wanted to take an idea, because of the discussion of height, what that might be. This is the house directly across the street. This is at 55 Osprey. Next. This one is at 59 Osprey, will be the next house going east. And then I turned around and looked back. This house is at 64 Osprey. The next one is the house that was the neighboring house. This is at 60. So those are the houses most immediately adjacent to what we had here. I think that's it. Is that it? Oh no, I got some again. The shed to the west has been noted. This is the shed. There's a slight deck with it. This is sitting on the west side of the house here. With one more next. I wanted to show you can see that neighboring house, and it was pointed out in one of the photos. Then you got a corner of that deck, the shed sort of behind the shrubbery. But you look across the dune vegetation to the other house, and you can see the corner of the shed on the west side of the structure. I believe that's it.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Any questions, board members, on the field report? No? Okay, we'll hear from the applicant or the agent. Evening again, Andy.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Once again, I am pinch hitting for Joel. I'm Richard A. Hammer from the office of Biondo and Hammer LLP in Montauk. I'm also here with Larry and his wife. Larry is an attorney, so if he gets up to speak, you don't have to swear him in. His family have owned this house since the early 1980s. Perhaps you can elaborate. That doesn't seem that long to me because the 80s seems like it was just yesterday. But in fact, that's pretty long history out here, unfortunately, for me. As you can tell, it's sort of an odd A-frame structure in an area that's kind of unique. As a matter of fact, it's not that unique in that area. There are several of these A-frame structures. I wonder what the actual history is, but it seemed like a builder might have, built a lot of these back in the day. It's also, so A-frame structures by themselves are sort of limiting. Also, the way this is oriented on the property, it's not oriented to north-south, or, it's oriented in, kind of cockeyed on the property. That is also kind of a unique situation. And it also is limiting, as the roof line on this property, as it was demonstrated, is pretty unique. And the askew placement of the structure makes additions to the structure very difficult based on current zoning restrictions. I'm going to focus largely on the dormers because, I think that's probably the largest thing that the board is looking at. In actuality, I think this is a fairly minor addition. That's just made by constructing 2 dormers onto the existing roof line. In total, it adds 180 square feet to the interior of the residence. That space exists now, it's just under the roof. So you're going to be lifting up so you can stand under the existing roof. So we're not proposing any clearing or anything associated with that. It's merely a change to the roof line. And also, the other thing that's worth pointing out is it's not higher than the existing roof. It's actually below the existing height of the existing structure. So you're lifting up dormers underneath that peak. These do trigger pyramid-based variances based on the existing roof height, as well as proximity to the property lines. It won't increase overall height, as I mentioned, but it would add some new mass within the pyramid line. Mr. Chafis had submitted letters of support from the affected neighbors that should be in the board's file. They're not objecting to the requested release. And the existing house, as viewed today, has 3 stories based on the grade level story. So that's another part of the relief. It's one of those unusual houses. As a matter of fact, I think remember Johann's picture showed across the street. It's pretty much the identical thing. And I think that's because these all predated zoning. This was probably developed under C zoning regulations, which no longer exist in the town. I think those were done away with in 1984 or thereabouts. So in reality, in terms of square footage, it's actually a pretty minor project, but it does trigger significant pyramid and 3rd story variance under our town code that when you look at it and evaluate it in terms of the variance standards is a little bit less problematic because it comes down to the benefit to the applicant versus the detriment to the general health. The other relief mentioned in the TAM concerns a hot tub. I think even the TAM says, that existed since 2007. That was about the era when people used to put hot tubs in and they were allowed if they were plug-in models, et cetera. Obviously the code has changed since then, but it is a small structure. It's kind of tucked in the side of the deck and no one has objected to it since it was built, 15 years ago or thereabouts, maybe even longer. The shed that we're talking about is also a very small structure. It's built right up against the house. I think part of these variances are attributable to the orientation of the house on the property line, meaning the shed on that side of the house. You can't have even a small shed because the house itself would conform. If we could redo time and shift it so that it would be oriented along property lines, it would probably be a perfectly allowable improvement, but not the way the house is. The current setbacks didn't apply that then, and that's why we're requesting relief to allow these fairly minor structures. I would say that the overall impact to the property is the benefit outweighs the detriment. As a matter of fact, we're proposing to do a sanitary upgrade on this property with, an IA system. That is not probably required under the square footage that we're adding, 180 square foot. We're not adding a bedroom or anything. We thought that was a good mitigation measure, and that's probably the only chance this board will ever get to see an upgraded sanitary on this property, short of a complete redevelopment of the lot, which this owner has a lot of affinity towards the existing structure and probably wouldn't be considering that in our lifetimes. Maybe his grandchildren would or something to that effect. But I do think that that's a very beneficial mitigation measure that you can factor into it. That and the fact that, the most affected neighbors from the pyramid haven't objected and, as a matter of fact, submitted letters of support. Other than that, I have Larry here who might have a few things to add, and then we're available for any questions.
Well, if you got, I can ask a couple of questions now. I'd like to concentrate on the 3rd story. You're proposing to increase the nonconformity. Is that correct?
I don't know if they mean the 3rd story.
It's a pre-existing nonconforming floor, is it not?
Well, if it's subject to a CO, it's conforming right now, so it is a
It's
conforming.
a pre-existing.
But the 180 square foot would be in addition to the
So you're
existing 3rd
increasing the
floor.
nonconformity. So
Yes.
my question then is it going to put it into, it's a legal 3rd story. Are you going to need to sprinkler the entire house? That's the question.
I believe, and I happen to have been reviewing a lot of that, not in this application, under the New York State or International Building Code, an alteration that adds square footage requires sprinklers to be constructed in the newly created space as well as a means of egress. On a reconstruction, if you were building a new structure, you would have to it used to be you just had to sprinkle the third. Now it's the entire residence. But I think this would fall under the alteration provisions of the International Building Code. So it will not require sprinkling of the whole house, just the additional areas and any means of egress.
And there's the letter from Mac Planning with regard to the upgraded. And
that's correct. And how it applies to climate, et cetera. Yes. For a very small structure, it had a lot of unusual things. So I know Joel had been going back and forth with Ann in the planning department to try and figure out some of those parameters.
It looks like the bedroom's existing. You're able to, if this were to be approved, you're able to reconfigure the stair and give a little more square footage to the bathroom, it looks like. You're not adding a bedroom, obviously.
That I would defer to Larry. He's a little shorter than I am, so maybe that it would help.
I'm looking at reviewing the plan. Yeah. Joe, we'll hear from the owner. If any more questions for Andy, board members? No? Okay, thanks, Andy.
Good evening. Thank you very much for considering my application. As Andy had just indicated, my family's owned this home for over 40 years, and I know when my parents bought it, they were very impressed with the A-frame itself and the unique nature of the house and the unique nature of the houses in our neighborhood. There are numerous houses in the neighborhood that are also A-frames, and there are several homes that also have dormers on their homes too. I just want to point out that the dormer that we're proposing is only on the north side of the house. It does not affect the south side of the house. It's only going to go about halfway through the whole house itself. And all it's really creating is really some more headroom for us in the loft space so that we have a little more area in the master bedroom, per se, up there, which would then allow us to just reconfigure the bedroom itself in that area. We're not changing the lot line at all. We're keeping within the framework of the roof itself, so we're not going past the roof line. And again, the dormers themselves are going to be, I think, 10 feet below the peak of the house also. And we wanted to keep it within the character and the nature of the other homes in the neighborhood. And I think that it does meet that qualification.
Thank you. Any questions for the?
Just for me, I think, looking right now at they call the addendum to the TAM, where the planner sketches in the project limiting fence. And I just want to make a point that that's going to be a very important line to hold with the dual that we're looking to preserve the existing dual. So I think I just want to bring that up.
Can you speak up, please?
Talking about the limiting fence that's proposed by the planning department as being a critical location, and that needs to be adhered to.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll hear from good evening again, Michael.
Good evening, board members. Mike Delisle for the planning department. You're going to have to forgive me. I don't have the plans and the survey available. The remote to my desktop unit is funky right now.
Yeah.
So all we have to go off is the aerial.
We have this.
Yeah, we have the hard copies in the file. So I just won't have them to display for the public and to view here. But you can see from the aerial that one of the concerns with adding the dormers is the orientation and location of the existing residence. And you'll see this in the plans too, that the largest nonconformity is the dormer on this side of the property, or on this side of the house. Because of how narrow the lot is, the pyramid lines nearly come to a peak right at the max height line. There's only about a couple of feet in the very center of the lot where they actually have a max height line. Otherwise, they're ruled by pyramid. So that's a concern, and why the magnitude of these variances is so significant for even just the 180 square feet that it adds to the residence. It is a third story variance. It is like I said, significant pyramid variances. And these are things to consider. It doesn't add a whole lot of living space to the existing structure. That being said, it does keep a couple of things in mind with regard to our NRSP standards. There's not a significant amount of clearing proposed with this, mostly to the rear of the property where that significant dune is, with beach heather, beach grass, bearberry, more of our significant and ecologically sensitive species that really don't do well through revegetation. These habitats really can't be replicated. So preserving them is our, kind of our biggest bang for our buck. So how tight a lot of the existing structures are to the existing residents. It's not sprawling as we see in some areas. It's not, they're not expansive. They're not walkways all over the place. It's tight to the existing structures. But again, it doesn't offset the magnitude of these variances. With that, I really don't have too much else to say. There's, a bit of a history here. There was a large amount of back and forth with the existing structure between the planning department and the agent and Ann Glennon regarding the FEMA concerns. And basically where this would trip up on it, whether or not they had to raise the residence. There's also letters in the board's file about the existing living space in the first floor. On whether or not they would lose that if this were approved, because that was a concern of ours. That, should this come before the board weigh in on it, approve it, it comes down to the end of the line, they lose that living space. They're basically down to a 1-bedroom house. So we wanted to make sure that before we brought it to the board, we checked all those boxes. So they are adding a sanitary system, though it's not necessarily something that is required by code. This isn't a substantial expansion under either one of the two definitions by the town code. They're putting it, you'll see on the survey, they're putting it in this northwest side. It's an area that's a little more disturbed. So again, they're leaving this southern section alone. The existing sanitary is somewhere between these two driveways. So getting it in a more conforming location, and arguably in a potentially better location with regard to groundwater.
Is that, quick question, Michael, is the vegetation over the existing sanitary, is that
over the existing sanitary over here?
Vegetation, should I say? And Michael, the reason I ask is that if so, it would be great if they could simply, and I believe that county code allows them to simply fill that with sand and abandon it instead of doing a lot of excavating.
Yeah, I mean, they could do it either way. It'd probably be more disturbance to take it out.
That's what I mean.
Than to just backfill it with sand and leave it. It's not as pristine as the rear of the lot. There are some sensitive species up there, but just being that this was probably their initial construction access when they came in and did the house in the first place, these two areas on this side of the driveway are more disturbed in general. The real area that we really want to protect and preserve is this southern area.
Mike, I'm going to go into the third story issue of this. Is the existing, this is a kind of a multifaceted question, is the existing a half story or a third story?
I believe it's considered a third. It would be considered a third story.
The existing presently is a third story.
Correct.
And okay, just for the benefit of everybody, can you define a half story?
I can't offhand. But the first story is measured by being more than 4 feet out of grade. And when you look at the topo on this property, and when you walk around the property, you can see they're more than 4 feet out of grade on the existing, what was the existing foundation. And then we have the first and the second. It was originally CO'd as a
I'm
two-story.
just addressing the notice because the notice says in the third story addition where 2.5 feet is the maximum number of stories permitted.
I mean, it would be a
2.5 feet. 2.5
stories. It would be an attic space.
Definition of a half story?
Effectively an attic space. It's not livable space. It's attic space. It's storage, a loft, something of that nature.
Okay. Michael, I just want to make a question first. And when you said you don't have available some of the drawings and some of the paperwork, you don't have the design drawings for this?
I don't have them. I mean, I have them available.
No,
I'm unable to open them. Yeah.
So although we can't put them up and see them, I would just make reference to page 4 and the design drawings because after talking about it's not being very significant, it certainly looks that way in elevation in terms of its impact, in terms of the design, its impact on the neighborhood. These two dormers not 10-foot floor, the existing ridge, the 3-foot floor, the existing ridge. And when you look at them, they are a sizable amount of roof area.
Correct.
And that sizable amount of roof area changes the look of the house somewhat significantly. It's not a minor, what we would call a slit dormer with a small roof that comes out. These are vaulted roofs to match the pitch of what was in the other part. Or if it doesn't match, it doesn't match, it shouldn't say that. But it is a very steep pitch. And so when I'm standing either on the roadside on Osprey or from behind, I've got quite a new piece of construction in front of me to look at. So I just want to make the point that where we don't have it up is that this is something that has to do with an aesthetic concern I would voice about the look of the house when we're done. The look of the house here, we have two very large dormers now facing down onto the street, and the massing of the house is going to look somewhat larger. That may not be enough of a reason, but I do think, to be particularly negative about this, but I think that there is a change here in what this building looks like.
Correct. It will be a substantial change.
Back to the character of the neighborhood, was pointed out by the owners, the applicant's representatives, that many of the houses in the neighborhood had this look. They don't actually have this look, number one. But number two is that this is certainly going to change the look of Fairmount. And so this is going to be a very large, imposing structure. It's peaked now, but now we turn that ridge in the other direction in 90 degrees. And I think it's significant. So we want to make that point at the public hearing that it's something of concern, although we're not doing it.
Yeah, it will be a significant change to the existing, and these alpine houses are pretty iconic in their own right.
And for anyone in the public, these are all on the, I believe, on the town, have they scanned the plans? been scanned?
They're available on the town website, yes.
Yeah. So if anyone in the public is interested in looking at these, they can go to the public hearing folder for this evening, and all of the documents and the plans, et cetera, are available to review. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you, Michael. Is there anyone here in the public who wishes to speak on this application? No? Okay. Andy, you're good? Or you don't need, if you don't have anything new, you don't need anything?
No, I did just want to respond to Ed's comment. I never tried to minimize this. I would say that there are a lot of A-frame structures. I didn't say there were any that looked exactly like this. I did want to point out that the roof on these A-frames is so steep that when you add a dormer, it's not like not an eyebrow dormer. It's a different type of roof form that you're creating. I think the applicant was the one who said they were 10 feet below, because I don't think he actually understood the plans in quite the level of detail that we do. But I also did want to point out that, Mike made some good points that, hey, we're trying to keep everything intact, not disturb outside that area. This is the plan that we came up with that we thought would maximize, the utility, even though it's 180 square feet, to the landowner, and still be compliant with the NRSP standards rather than redeveloping the site and, potentially endangering some of these things. So that was really the intent, was to try and stay within the four corners of what the developed areas are. It is a pretty tight site, but it's also used in a tight fashion. So I think that the fact that beach vegetation exists in its current form is kind of a testament to the stewardship of the property over the last 40 years. So, there is a commitment to seeing this site remain as pristine as possible. And this was why the intent was to try and get the dormers as opposed to any other potential way to expand living space.
Okay.
Any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, Ed, you want to close this out then?
Yeah, in the matter of Lawrence Chaffetz of 56 Osprey Road and Gansett, some kind of tax maps, 300-131-7-2. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
And the record as well.
And the written record. I'll second that.
I'll concur.
Concur. And I concur as well. Ed, Michael, thank you all for coming out. Andy, thank you. Okay, We will move on to our next scheduled public hearing this evening. The applicant is Kevin McDermott, and the lot size and location is 8,841 square feet at 3 Merrill's Road in Amagansett, tax map number 300-84-3-18. Description is to construct a 160 square foot screened-in porch and allow decking and a hot tub to remain within side yard setbacks and outside the town's pyramid regulations. The relief sought 3 variances from 255-11-10 dimensional regulations and 1 variance from 255-11-72 pyramid of the town code, and any other relief necessary. The following variances are required: a 1 foot and 2.2 foot variance are required to allow the porch to be constructed and decking to remain 7 feet and 5.8 feet from side yard lot lines where 8 feet is required. 1 variance of 13 feet is required to allow the hot tub to remain 7 feet from the side yard lot line where 20 feet is required. 1 variance of 12.3 feet is required to allow the porch to be constructed outside the town's pyramid regulations. This is in a B residence zone. Flood zone here is X, secret class is type 2. And this is, and council, do we have a proper affidavit of service and posting?
Affidavit that the mailings were done on the 13th day of August, and that the posting was also done on the 13th day of August, so the paperwork appears to be in order.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is in my Amagansett district. I did this, a field report, if you would. Michael is driving that. Okay, board members, as you see, the first image is taken from the driveway. This was properly posted. Next, please. Oh, I'm sorry, go back for a second. I'll just so you know that, you could go back, Michael, one. This just gives you a longer distance shot. You see the house in the background of the photo. Next, Michael, please. I just turned around to give this. Actually, I turned around. If you're looking on the survey, I turned around to give you a sense of the neighborhood, and I'm looking to the north and the west up what's called a private road, Merrill's Road. There, I'm looking up towards the bay. And then I turn next, please. There's some trailers, and these across the street here. You see, I turned and looked down the other way towards the southwest. This would be to give you a sense of the neighborhood. Next, please. Now I've walked up closer to the house, and we see what is on the survey. I'm looking at January 26, 2021. I don't believe we have a newer one than that. I think that's, but you'll note it's called proposed porch. It's actually fully constructed, as you see right there. Michael, I've been informed that there's been a building permit, and Michael can touch on all these issues.
Yeah, what was it?
I have January 26th.
No, I think there's a March 17th.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at the wrong one then. Okay.
I have March 17th.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll look on there for now. Oh, maybe could I just use yours? Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you, Michael. Next image. Okay, here I'm going along the north side of the house. Here, and Michael can touch on this, but this is between the house, and on the left side of the image would be the other piece of property that on the survey says now formerly of Eve and Lucille Bernkamner. But in fact, actually, it is the same owner, but we can touch on that later. I just wanted to point that out to you, that is on the left side. It's a vacant parcel. It's really quite beautiful, untouched landscape there, vegetation there. And in the rear of this, you see the deck on the back rear of the photo is the deck on the back and the hot tub. Next, please, Michael. I just turned to the left and kind of looking north and east there to give you a sense of that. But no, it's more north. I'm looking kind of over at the neighbor. That house there is actually across the private road. It's not on the adjacent lot. You can barely see it through the trees, but it's quite nice, nicely natural vegetation there. Next, please. Now here I've come to the back of the house and I'm facing south and looking at the deck, and you see the framed out opening for the hot tub on the left center portion of the photo. That hot tub was in the driveway actually. And you see the neighboring house to the south at the rear of the photo in the background. Again, the land in the backyard is quite beautiful as well. And it's basically been left alone, which was great to see. Next, please. Now I've walked into the back and I'm looking back at the house, and you also see the neighbor to the south there. You will note that the even on this survey of March 17th, it does call out still the front porch as proposed, and it calls out the proposed roof, where in fact from that photo and the next photo you'll see that area is roofed over and it's not a screen porch. You'll see those are glass windows. I didn't go into the building itself, but we can talk about that with the applicant or their agent. But that is fully enclosed space with a roof on it. Next photo, please. And now I'm gone, and I'm looking here due west, pretty much between the two houses there, the one to the south and the subject property. And just to give you the sense of their adjacency there. Next, please. Now I walked up towards the deck, and I'm just showing you another angle of it with the hot tub on the roof after the photo. Just another angle of that deck. Next, please. And now I just turned around. I'm kind of facing their due southwest, just to give you. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I've walked back towards the front of the house and the southwest corner, and I'm looking back at that neighborhood to show you how close it is right there. Next, please.
That's it.
Okay. Any questions, board members? No? And Terry?
Sorry, where is it? This is the pyramid? No, this one. This is where the pyramid is.
The pyramid.
Proposed porch.
No, it'd be for the proposed roof there. Yeah. We can let Lori discuss this with us. Good evening, Lori.
Good evening.
Do you want to introduce yourself, and then I'll swear you in for the record?
Lori Wiltshire with Land Planning Services, representing Kevin McDermott of 3 Merrill's Road LLC.
Okay, thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great.
So, yeah, that's correct. I heard your question, Teresa. The proposed front porch does not require any relief. It's the rear porch that needs the pyramid and the side yard setback relief. And the application is for 4 minor variances in order to allow construction of a small screen porch, decking, and a hot tub. The project does not require a natural resources special permit, and in fact will not cause any ground disturbance at all, as the screen porch and hot tub are atop an existing deck. According to an affidavit from the owner's father, which is part of your file, both the house and the deck predate zoning. As pointed out in the TAM, the parcel is undersized at 8,841 square feet, is only 50 feet wide, and the existing residence is pre-existing and non-conforming in terms of side yard setbacks and pyramid. The rear deck is pre-existing with regard to the northern side yard setback. The pre-existing roof line of the house was continued to create the covered porch and blends seamlessly with the existing house. The covered porch was constructed over what was originally decking. The screen porch and the hot tub, well, it's no longer a screen, it's a porch. The porch and hot tub will not cause an undesirable character in the neighborhood, nor will it create a detriment to nearby properties. There's a single family dwelling to the south. The Hansons, who own that property, have written in support of this application. To the north and the east, the properties are vacant. The benefits sought cannot be achieved by some other method than the requested dimensional and pyramid variances due to the location and setbacks of the existing house and decking on the undersized lot. The requested variances are not significant: 1 foot, 2.2 feet, 12.3 feet, and 13 feet. And the pyramid variance is actually less non-conforming than the existing house. It is not creating a greater non-conformity, because the roof of the house is actually taller than the roof to the porch. And so the difficulty causing the applicant's request the variances may be considered self-created. This should not preclude the granting of the variances. And while the work that's being done here in this does not warrant upgrading the sanitary system, the applicant has no objection to stipulating that any increase in existing gross floor area in the future would require such an upgrade at such time.
So I'll start off with a few questions.
Yes.
First of all, how did this get a building permit if it required this variance?
So the building permit that's been issued is for the interior renovation work. I believe the contractor just continued on with the whole project. It looks like almost everything is built except for the hot tub being installed. That's what it looks like to me.
Is that the reason for the stop work orders?
Yes.
But I'm sorry, so what was the building permit?
Initially, they were doing roof work. Initially, they're doing roof work. And they got a stop work order, got a permit to repair the roof. Then they were doing interior renovation work, got a stop work order, got a building permit to continue the interior renovation work. This application has been pending prior to that building permits being filed, but I think the contractor's gone on to do most of the work prior to this coming before the board.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
I know, I'm aware.
Okay, and it's also not a screen, all these plans are talking about a screen porch. It's not a screen porch, it's completely habitable area.
I think that if you take the windows out and put screens in, it's a seasonal screen porch.
Yeah, well, that's not what we're looking at. They purchase windows and install windows, so that's habitable. But the reason I'm getting at is it could become a bedroom, and it gets into the sanitary system and the upgrade. And it's kind of shocking when someone has a stop work order that they continue to work. And as well,
my client was stuck in London because of COVID. He couldn't come home. And this work was being done unbeknownst to him.
well, I don't imagine that the guy was working for free. That's neither here nor there, because I don't think people are working for free building houses and building roofs and porches and closing them in and buying windows and doors. As well, I should have looked closer when I was there. Is that a proposed second floor deck over that roof?
No, not according to the plans.
I know, well, forget the plans, because they're not being followed.
No, they've got an eyebrow window up there. So the roof goes like this, and then there's an eyebrow window, and then the roof continues.
Pardon me one second. Can you go back, Michael, to the?
Yes.
Because these plans are useless, because that's not what's going on.
The plans are like.
They're diagrams that
They're stick figure.
Right. So look at that right there. That sure looks like a roof deck could happen right up there, doesn't it? Above.
Well, there's no way to access it though, because these are just tiny little windows. So it can't really be a roof deck.
Well, considering this contractor, you might be putting in sliding doors next week. We never know.
I don't think they have the ceiling height to get out between there and there. They definitely don't.
You can't tell from that.
Well, they're up here now. So this roof continues the same pitch as this roof. And then those are just the small windows above. This was intended as a screen porch. I will ask my client if those are winter storm windows, in other words.
So just for the record, the stop work order had to do with the deck at one point, correct? And
No, the deck actually, if you look at the affidavit that's written by the father of the owner, who was the previous owner, the deck in the house has been there since before zoning. I know it came up in the TM.
The small deck where that's now a room has been there. In the plans, they show the small deck there.
If you look at the aerial photographs and you look at the.
Well, we can touch on that with Michael, but let's just move along nonetheless, because it's a bit disconcerting that this project was given a stop work order. This contractor continued to work. I mean, I'm wondering if, is this person licensed in East Hampton town? This stuff shouldn't just be going, we shouldn't just be ignoring this and saying, oh, that's the way it goes. The client was in London, So just so you know, that's a big concern of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll hold off for now.
But the roof deck doesn't show on any of your drawings.
Yeah, I don't see anything. So obviously, before anything is approved, I know I'm going to want to see everything reflected as built plans and whatever. I'm not going to approve something that's diagrams like this that are not being built to.
And I would be surprised if the building department would
full set of drawings like this.
Go ahead, Roy. Yes.
I don't have more to add. I mean, I'm taking down your comments, and I understand that you want as-built plans.
And well, there's a lot more than that. I mean, also, I'd like to, before I make any decision on this, I'm going to want to go back to the site myself for sure and take another look. And I also would want the building department to have another look, because to me, that looks like an added room to this house. That could easily be a bedroom, and that could easily trigger an upgrade of the sanitary system. Because right now, I think we just have literally a cesspool in the front yard, which is a shame when you're that close to the bay. I'm surprised that's not even being offered as mitigation, but that's just my opinion. So I certainly am not going to close the written record today, and I'm certainly going to be doing another site visit with your approval. I can let you know when I'm going there. And I don't want to just, right now, when I was there today, it's being spackled or something. It's not living. Right. They're working on it. So I'm sure that's not a problem for you if I went back.
Not a problem for what?
To go back to the site and take another look.
If they're still working on it, yeah.
Okay, let's hear from the other questions with her.
Board members, Michael. So, yeah, this one's got a bit of an interesting history, kind of to say the least. The earliest record in the building history is a request for a lot inspection in 2005. It looks like the house was built somewhere between 1958 and 1962, based on aerial review. Granted, the earlier aerials prior to 62 are a bit spotty, and there are only certain sections of town, so they're not used very frequently. So the property's been in the same ownership, or the family ownership, since that time, and has been improved, and it's never received a building permit nor a CO. The next record after the 05 lot inspection in the building history is a stop work order for 2020 for the roof being removed without a building permit. They didn't get a permit to do that. They got a stop work order for interior alterations and everything else pending this application. This has been going on for some time. These lots in this area of town were at one point subject to C zoning. It was quarter-acre zoning, which is why a lot of them are so narrow. They have been upzoned. It's currently 1 acre zoning. So a lot of these lots along Merrill's Road have a very similar situation. They're set back on the property, kind of on the top of a hill. They're tight to each other because of the width of the lot. One of the biggest things that we noticed during our review that can change is that he is the same property owner as the property to the north. So these two lots could be combined, and it would remove the need for a variance for the stuff on the north side of the property. So that is an alternative versus requesting a variance. That lot is currently vacant and unimproved. There does appear to be some clearing on it based on the site photos, site visits, but there are no structures. Again, there's been no building permit issued on that property either. There's a bit of a sort of history on this property. But I think the largest thing that the board could ask for is to have these lots be combined. They'd be more conforming to the zoning. Probably close to 30,000 square feet total lot size, where the minimum is 40. So it's a lot closer than the 8,000 that this one is currently. And it would remove the need for the variances. So you would just be asking for the variances on the southern side of the property line, which, as we see in the record, we've got a letter of support from that neighbor on that side. It does look, though, based on your site photos today, that deck is actually expanded compared to the survey that we have, closer to that southern lot line. So getting a current as-built may shed light on a few other issues. That being said, the planning department doesn't really have a strong opinion on dimensional variances. As Lori had mentioned, it doesn't require a natural resource special permit or any significant environmental concerns. This is a unique habitat over here. It's kind of a pine barren-esque habitat giving way to the waterside properties to the north. It's tucked away. It borders, the trustee land. Potentially getting that cesspool removed with, getting an upgraded sanitary system could also be a benefit. And, given the past history of non-compliance, it may not be something the board may want to consider. That being said, I really don't have too much to add on this one.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Any questions from Michael? Board members on this? No? Okay, I just want to say, as this board knows, that Michael Delalio, this will be his last public hearing with us, and Michael and his family are relocating, and I know I speak for the board when I say that we wish you the best, Michael, and you've been a pleasure to work with, and we thank you for your service to East Hampton Town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak on this application? Okay, seeing none. Lord, do you want to come back up for a second, please? Mm-hmm. So a little homework I have for you, if you please.
Yes.
So we're going to want to see as-built plans.
Got that.
Run up by somebody, whatever, so not just sketches, like
Yes.
real plans, like by somebody, an engineer and architect or something.
Mm-hmm.
As well as I would like to see copies of any building permits that were issued for this project and copies of the plans that went along with those applications so that we have a complete file here. And then after those are submitted, I am going to send a copy and write a letter to the chief building inspector in Lennon and ask her to review these plans. That would be after this board gets to review them.
Mm-hmm.
This is with regard to gross floor area expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, board members, that you would like to see in the written record? No?
Dimension survey.
And an as-built, it's as-built survey too.
So we're talking about proposed plans, or that's part of the building?
And proposed plans. If anything is different, I mean, I don't know.
See what this thing's gonna look like.
Yes. At the end of the day, we want plans for what was permitted and plans for what was built and plans for what's being proposed. If there are any changes, I can't imagine there's any changes. It looks like it's completely, they're spackling it,
So to get as-built surveys done in this climate, I'm gonna need at least
You can take all the time you want.
3 months.
Yeah.
At least.
So you want to close.
And honestly, I can counsel, it seems to me we should know if this contractor is licensed in the town of East Hampton, and if so, I would certainly want that to go through the proper channels with the licensing board. If somebody is actually just ignoring a stop work order and finishing a house that has no building permits. So.
I'd like to add that we'd like to know if the work is going to continue during this 3-month period. We're waiting to hear back from them. According to the chair, they were spackling today, and there was interior work going on.
Yeah, it looked all sheetrock. I just looked in the door.
There's a, if you look at the history, there is a building permit issue.
Right.
The
And the interior may have gotten a permit, I believe.
The interior definitely has a building permit.
Okay.
Yes, and there are plans for that, and I've written down that you'd like to see those too.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so.
3 months gets you to November 23rd.
And if we need more time, I will ask for it.
Okay, so with regard to Kevin McDermott at 3 Merrill's Road in Amagansett, tax map number 300-84-3-18, I make a motion to close the public hearing and leave the written record open until November, Council,
23rd.
2021.
I'm second it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laurie. Thank you, Michael. Okay, our final public hearing this evening. The applicant is 376 Bleecker Street. The lot size and location is 40,000 square feet total at 78 Seaside Avenue, Seaside Shores, lots 5 and 6, block 601 in Montauk, tax map number, 300-32-7-26.1. Description is to demolish a one-story residence and construct a 2,693 square foot two-story residence, swimming pool with approximately 602 square feet of first-story decking, roof deck, and 168 square foot shed on a parcel of land containing freshwater wetlands. The relief sought here is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-4-20 and variances from 255-4-40 minimum wetland setbacks of the town code and any other relief necessary. The following wetland setback variances are required. 1, 2, and 3 variances of 49.3, 16 feet, and 49.6 feet are required to construct a residence swimming pool with terrace and shed 50.7 feet, 84 feet, and 50.4 feet respectively from wetlands where a 100-foot setback is required. 4, a 66-foot variance is required to install the sanitary system 84 feet from wetlands where a 150-foot setback is required, and a 29-foot variance is required to allow land clearing of 21 feet from wetland where a 50-foot setback is required. This is in a zoning district that is B, residence. The flood zone here is X. The secret class is type 2. And council, do we have a proper affidavit of service and posting?
I have an affidavit that the mailings were done on the 13th day of August. And I have another affidavit that the posting was done on the 13th day of August. So the paperwork appears to be in order.
Okay, thank you, council. And this is in board member Berger's Montauk District. Terry, if you would, please. Oh, did I do this one? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Here's the official notice posted. It, like many things, took quite a beating in the hurricane, but it's hanging on. It was curled up. It's posted at the roadside. Seaside Road is not improved, the road that we have dealt with in other applications. Here I am looking south towards the ocean, and the road goes down, and eventually disappears. Next. I'm looking back north. This goes back up to Montauk Highway, and there are a number of improved lots along the way. You should make note that all these photos of the heavy vegetation in the area that it's quite overgrown in some places. Next. Here I'm looking up the driveway. I'm standing in the road and I'm looking straight up the driveway. The applicant's car is the one that's all the way up there, and you can see that's a natural parking area. Again, it's very heavily vegetated, and you can see that the driveway right now is just about clearance enough for a car to get through. Some of what we're going to see in these and other photos are non-native species that have been pointed out at one point in the town. Next. Now I'm standing at that parking area and I'm looking up towards the house. A couple of things to notice here. One is the car, by the way. The other is to look up and see that there's a rise associated with this property, and that house, which we'll see better in a few photos coming up, sits at the top of a pretty good rise as it works its way westward on the property. Next. I'm looking off to one side of the improved area. I'm off the parking lot. This is looking north. Next. That's next. Yeah, that's good. I think I'm going to go back to that. But primarily to show that there was a small shed that was off the property coming off of the parking lot now. Now I'm turned around, I'm looking back over the car, down the driveway, back out towards Seaside Avenue. To do some orientation. Again, the vegetation very heavy in here, all on the property line. Next. The TAM points out the presence of bamboo, well established here on this property line. I think I may have taken one on the photo. It exists in more than one location, but here we see it standing up fairly tall. And this is on the north side of the property. Next. Now I'm a lot closer to the house, and you can see the basic structure and the architecture of the house as it exists now. That's privet in front of the house. There's a deck in front there as well, and you can see that it's pretty much a glass wall. That wall is going to be looking east on the house. Next. Return from that same spot, and I look to the south. This is the structure. This is the residence immediately to the south. Based on the age of the materials that we see on the house and the driveway nearby, it's a fairly recent construction. Next. Now we're taking a few more steps, and I'm looking back up at the house. We can see that the vintage of the construction. We can see that the age of the deck and what it looks like at this time, the condition of the property. Next. Yeah, I've gone a little bit further. I just wanted to show that that building that stands up to the south also sits at the top of the rise, so it's got a significant height to it as well. Next. About around behind the house, and I'm looking due west and down through into the shrubbery is an old shed. There's a shed there. Next. I've turned around from looking down at that shed. Now I'm looking east, but this would be the west face of the structure. Next. Just to give it an idea of the perspective on one structure to another. You can see that house again to the south. Next. This is the first shed is to my right that I was taking a picture of through the shrubbery. I made my way back in. There's the second shed. These have been noted. Next. Just to show the general condition of them. Obviously, they haven't been used for a while. This one's in quite a bit of disrepair. Next. I guess I just shot back down the driveway. I was hoping this was going to show that there's an elevation change. I'm standing up a bit, looking down. There is fairly significant elevation change as you work your way from the parking pad up to the location of the house. Yeah. Is that it? Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Ed, any questions, board members? Oh, okay, we will hear from the applicant or the agent, the applicant.
Good evening, Chairman Whalen, members of the board. Tiffany Scarlato, I'm of counsel this evening for Burke and Sullivan, 41 Meeting House Lane, Southampton. I'm not going to take up too much of your time because I have the project team with me this evening who I believe can address most of the issues in the TAM. I have from Inner Science, Principal Rich Warren and his associate Mike Shiano. I have ownership here, who's Bill Powers. He is in the back. Katie Maresca is here from Maresca Engineering, and Dan Thorpe and his associate Sarah DeGray are here as the landscape architects, and they'll be able to speak to all of the issues raised in the town.
Okay.
Over to Rich Warren right now.
Okay, thank you. And typically, that we allow 10 minutes for the applicant, 3 minutes for any consultants. I mean, we're willing to be a little lenient, but you all have to, we have all your drawings and your documents. You all have to be, you know what I'm saying? Good evening, Richard.
Good evening.
I'll go ahead and swear you in, Richard. If you could introduce yourself first, please.
Hi, Richard Warren, President of InterScience Research Associates, Southampton, New York.
Thank you. Richard, you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. Good evening. Richard Warren here on behalf of the applicant. On this piece of property, we have an existing one-story house. It's 1,012 square feet. The house is a single cesspool that's 63 feet away from the wetlands to the east, 37 feet away from the wetlands to the north on the property. There are 3 wetlands pockets that surround this home. What we've done is we've got a couple of drawings here to show you that are the landscape architect's drawings. The house is served by public water. There's no drainage control in the house, as you've probably seen when you looked at it. The house is located at the top of the hill on the property. It's up on the flat. There's a flat area on the property, and the topography pitches in both directions. There's a gravel driveways. There's several sheds, as you saw, that are in different states of disrepair. What you also saw in the photographs is, interestingly, you saw a lot of areas where the applicant actually needs a little storage, surfboards, those kind of things. And that's one of the reasons why I've requested the shed. Like most of Montauk, this area is poorly draining soils. And on this piece of property, the test hole showed that there's 3 feet of sand and loam and 50 feet of clay material underneath the property. Like you find in most of wetland areas of Montauk, the wetlands on this property occur at different elevations. The wetland to the west, the elevations are between elevation 38 and 40 on the property. The wetlands along Seaside Avenue are elevation 24 to 12 to 16 feet. So you have these wetlands that are in different elevations. That's really based upon the soil and hydrologic conditions. The wetlands here don't follow neat boundaries, and that's really because of the clay. The strategy for the development of this property, when we looked at this, we realized that we had a site that had no conforming envelope on it. The setbacks are such that you've got wetlands 3 sides. So how do we make the conditions better? How do we improve the environmental conditions of the property? So the strategy was to sanitary system upgrade. When we started this project, IA systems were not something that was even on the table. And during the process, that was modified. So we include an IA system with it now. Provide drainage control, improve the structural setback to wetlands, remove zoning nonconformities. The existing house is nonconforming to the side yard setback for the property line to the south. Remove the invasive bamboo and provide native plantings for the disturbed areas. So the first priority that we had in looking at this is, where do we put the sanitary system? Because you've got wetlands on 3 sides. So the strategy that we took with this is the sanitary system, which is a discharging system on the site. How do we find the best location for the sanitary system before we even design the house? So we brought in Steve Maresca's office, Katie Maresca, who's here, to help us work with that. The architect, Randy Goya, designed the house after we had the sanitary system located. And then the grading and restoration plans were prepared by Manthorpe of LaGuardia. This hasn't been any small effort to get to you tonight. We started this conversation on this piece of property in 2017. Our first communication with the planning department was in 2017. We showed them the concept plan for the property before we even filed an application, because we wanted to make sure that we're trying to go in the right direction on the site. So we submitted a plan, and you have all these in packages. So this was the first informal submission that we made to the board, and we got some constructive comments back from the staff. They want us to tighten up the lawn. They wanted to increase the wetland setbacks from the house. They questioned whether the garage that was proposed should be so close to wetlands. The driveway that was originally proposed to be relocated, because the thought was that maybe we should try to get those wetlands pockets and get the driveway through a narrower section of wetlands and try to merge those two to have a more consistent, cohesive wetlands pocket. That was discouraged. And the extent of the retaining walls for the sanitary system is located right here, was also discouraged. So we went back to the drawing boards. We redesigned the project. We redesigned the house, the footprint of the house. We moved the garage. We eliminated the driveway relocation. We adjusted the retaining walls. We adjusted the clearing limits. Then we made our formal application in October of 2018. So almost 3 years ago. We received comments from the planning department. So the submission that we made initially is this project here. House footprint's different, and you can see that there are some changes. So the submission that we made here, we got some further comments, and we were asked to make further revisions to it. The comments that we received, caused us to do now a further submission. And each time we do this, we have to go back and do engineering. We have to do architectural, landscape plans, grading, sanitary, try to figure all this out. So this has been no small effort. This submission was in February 2020. The house was shifted in a location to try to improve the setback back here. These wetlands on the back are regulated by New York State DEC. They don't regulate those on this side.
The setback of the proposed house that we now propose is greater than the setback of the existing home. We tightened up the clearing limits. The one-car garage was now turned into a shed to store the surfboards and the things that you saw there on the site. There is no basement with this house. This house is going to be on a slab, so we won't have the excavation for a basement. But they do need some storage for some of the things that we all collect in life.
No, I'm sorry, why are you not doing a basement so that you don't have to
We
excavate?
don't have to do the excavation, yeah.
So what are you sitting on, a slab?
The house will be on a slab.
So you'd be excavating your footings down to
That's the issue for the footings, but there would not be the excavation for a basement. So, and part of that has to do with the clay too, because of the clay that's here. You have 3 feet of loam on top of clay. So, no basement here.
So, not to get into the weeds here, but if you're hitting clay with those footings, you can't be, you and your engineers will be working that out, but you said.
Yeah. Retaining walls were designed and shortened. So the retaining wall that used to come down through here was pulled back. The shed was moved back, grading through here. And the retaining wall is really designed in order to accomplish the health department requirements for the flat area that you need for the sanitary system. Landscape plan was redesigned, and then the sanitary engineer prepared a response to the staff who had some questions about sanitary design and the retaining walls. These plans were submitted back in February. We had a conference call with your staff in June of 2020 to review this. We were asked to make further modifications, so we did. And that's the plan that we have before you now, which is this plan. This is the one that's subject to the hearing. And this plan was further modification. We reduced the height. We were asked to reduce the height or eliminate the retaining wall to entirety. The retaining wall has been eliminated. We were asked to consider design for sanitary system with a gravelless absorption trench and an IA system. IA was added to it. Katie Maresca is here to talk about the sanitary design in a moment.
Did you say the retaining wall was eliminated?
The retaining wall has been completely eliminated.
What date of the survey you're looking at? Oh, it's not on the survey, it's still on the survey.
It should be on the survey. Yeah.
What's I have, what's the latest date? I have January.
Are you talking about the landscape plan or the survey itself?
The survey.
The survey that's on the screen.
We have a Maresca, December 29th, 2020.
October 30th.
October 30th, 2020.
October 30th. October 30th.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at, I'm saying we have a Maresca.
I see it,
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. So the retaining wall was eliminated and graded back through here. The septic was tightened up in this area. And the sanitary engineer provided some further information relative to the retaining walls and the request. So the house conforms to pyramid. There was a question about whether or not this house conformed. The architect actually moved. The stairway to the roof deck used to be over here, was moved down here to make sure that it did conform because the house is cocked on an angle slightly. So we made sure that that pyramid also meets GFA. So we worked hard to try to get this plan to work. We were asked to eliminate the swimming pool at this point. We had the swimming pool, which is actually a very small 6x17 swim spa, self-contained swim spa, tucked here in the middle of the decking, or with the house surrounding it. And we didn't eliminate that. We'd asked early on, we'd had it in the plans early on, and in the initial conversations, we didn't have any significant objection to it, but the objections actually came up later in this, and it was suggested that we eliminate it. The swim spa itself that we have located is 75 feet from the wetlands. And it's 7 foot by 16 feet. On the property right next door here, the board granted a swimming pool on this piece of property in 2011. And that pool was 16 by 32. And that pool was located 16 feet from the wetlands. So we're 75 feet from the wetlands in the back, and we're conforming to the wetlands in the front. We tried to keep that as far away as we can. It's small, it's self-contained, We have a drainage system that's been designed so that it has capacity to handle the runoff from the pool. The DEC has issued their permit for this, which you have in your file. Health Department says they're ready to issue their permit for this if you issue the natural resource permit. The metrics of this current proposal, just so you have an idea about where we are. The existing house is 1,012 square feet. We're going to a 2,693 square foot, 2-story home. It's not excessively large. The existing house is 3 bedrooms. We're going to 4. The family has there's 4 members of the family, two children and a husband and a wife. The existing house is 44 feet from wetlands, the western wetlands. We're going to 50 feet, so we're improving that. The existing house is 88 feet from the wetlands to the east. We're going to 100 feet. It's 115 feet from the north wetlands. We're going to 109. So we're conforming on this side to the wetlands setbacks. So we're looking for relief here, although we're getting further away than the existing home. The sanitary system is 37 feet to the northern wetlands at present. We're going to 112, 63 feet to the east wetland, going to 84, and 100 feet to 93 feet on the western wetland here. So it's really about trying to find a location here with this arc of wetlands around us to find a central location for the sanitary. So what we did is we tried to design a system here that improves the requirements as best we can. We provided drainage control. You'll see on the plan, there's bleaching pools that are proposed around the house. That's been designed by Maresca Associates. We have zoning conformity with the house now, where the existing house is not conforming to zoning. It doesn't meet the setbacks, doesn't meet, this house will meet pyramid. Lot coverage, the lot coverage on this actually reduces. The surveyors calculated that the existing has 1,535 square feet of lot coverage, of roofed structures. And we're reducing that to 1,505. So we're actually getting better, even though the house is getting bigger, but it's going up. Lot clearing, existing is 8,031 square feet. In order to accomplish this, we will have to do some additional clearing in this area, which is the large area through here is where the bamboo is as well. We need about 640 square feet of clearing. At the conclusion, when this is finished, we will have a total of 6,628 square feet of the property that will be cleared. The rest will be revegetated. So the clearing actually reduces from what exists today. So again, the metrics, we tried to make everything better as best we could. We got the TAM report on July 16th. And after we got that, we saw that there were still some issues we had to address. So the TAM report says that the property finds that the gross floor area appears to exceed the constraints of the property. If you've been to the site and you've seen it, it's a small, but it's a well-used home by the applicant. It's tight for this family of 4. The allowable gross floor area on the property is 4,329 square feet. If you subtract out the wetlands from the lot area, we're proposing 2,693 square feet, considerably less than what's permissible. It's not really an ostentatious house if you look at the floor plans of the house. In the floor plans, there's 2 bedrooms at this end of the house. They share a bathroom. They didn't even make it big enough to have single bathrooms for their 2 children. They share a bathroom. On the second floor, there's a master bedroom at this end, has its own bathroom. And then downstairs, one of the bedrooms is here, and they have to walk over through here to get to another bathroom that serves this common area for the home.
Okay, Richard, I think if you could think about wrapping up, I'll just make one comment here. I don't believe you did not mention, though, from the southern wetland, you're proposing, I believe the residence is 50.7 feet. One that you did not notice, but it's noticed in our hearing, but just to point that out.
Okay, I missed that, and I apologize.
Yeah, good. That's the most severe. Anyway, just make.
Actually, that would be from this one here. That's from the back wetland, the western wetland. Because the western wetland,
the wetlands that are to the south and the west, yes.
The western wetland, we're at 44, and we're going to 50 some odd.
50.7.
Yeah. So we are actually improving it from what exists, but we still need relief, and that's the one we need the most relief from, the wetlands in the back. The property to the south here, also in 2008, this board granted a new home on that property. The property is essentially the same size as this. It's 40,000 square feet, has wetlands, the board granted approval for a 2,800 square foot house, about 30 feet from wetlands.
That was not this board, that was.
No, I understand, but it was the Town of East Hampton zoning board of appeals, natural resource permit. We've tried to improve things here as much as we can. The topography of the property, there was a concern about the topography and the grade changes through here, that the report says that the footprint goes from 39 to 42. Well, if you look at the topo, the large portion of this home is up on a flat, up through here. There's a small corner here that's in the slope right in through here, but it's not as though you've got a dramatic change in grade from one corner to the other on a steep pitch. This is pretty much flat up top here. And the area that we need to do the grading for the sanitary, you have to have 20 feet of flat around your leaching pool. So this is an area that's proposed to be sloped. It's also the area where the bamboo is. It'll be removed and graded. They're filled and graded in order to get the requirements for the health department. Then the foundation wall through here would be used to tie back these grades, as you can see there. There's a question about the volume of fill for grading on the site. The wick system, our sanitary system that's proposed here is a wick system. This is done in most of Montauk. You know, when you have this clay, as you probably know, you dig the sand collar, you have the cutting rings, and you fill it with sand, put your leaching pool on top, you have your treatment going into that. This way the sanitary waste goes down. The wick system itself, is the excavation and the fill is about 250 yards of material. That's the most, that's the fill that's required to be taken out and put in to create the wick. When we looked at some alternatives, which Katie Maresca is going to talk about in a moment, we actually looked at what the fill computations were different for the different systems, because we were asked to look at the gravelous adsorption, which are pressurized systems, to try to eliminate getting to the excavation of the wick. Putting the system up on top of the clay, as opposed to digging a collar down to the clay. We were asked to look at that, so we did, and we have some plans to show you on that. We were asked to consider eliminating the shed.
Okay, we have to keep going here, Richard. We've got a lot of other people here from, if you can sum it up for us.
Okay, I'll try. I just, John, Mr. Chairman, we've been in the process here for 3 years, with an application to the board for 3 years. So I would ask you, just give me a little bit more time. I'm coming to the end.
Okay.
So I appreciate your attention and thank you for that. But it has been long for the applicant. It's not been an easy process for them. We were asked to eliminate the bamboo removal here. Dan Thorpe is here to speak about that. So I won't belabor that part. We were asked, there was a concern about the landscape plan that we have. We're happy to work with the planning department in terms of the plant materials. If they want some sort of change to plant materials, we'll work with that. We thought we prepared a plan that used native plants. So the TAM recommended that we look at alternative septic systems, and the WIC is what we originally proposed. So between the time of getting the TAM and now, we had to get our hydrogeologists go out to do a percolation test on the property and have the engineers actually try to sort out what those designs would be. So we looked at the two systems for the treatment of this property. We apologize for the last minute plans. The sanitary design, Katie Maresca will show you that this is what was requested of us. We couldn't get it in by Friday because the plans were finished today. We'll give them to you. You'll want time to look at them, I'm sure. So that's fine. But a lot of work has gone in to try to get to where we are tonight. So she did a plan for a pressurized geomat system and a pressurized infiltrative system, both of which sits on top of the clay. And she'll talk about those. There's some concern on my part that these systems now sit on top of the clay. You have clay that mounds on this property with wetlands sitting up on top of the clay. So the sanitary effluent is probably going to follow the clay and maybe get into the wetlands as opposed to in a sand wick that gets down. So, I'm going to turn it over to Katie Maresca.
Okay, and Katie Maresca is not going to have that amount of time that you've had, certainly, Richard, just so you know. But we understand we're considering you the main applicant here, so you get more time. But otherwise, we're going to be looking for 3, 4, or 5 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
We don't, it's great, but anything can be submitted. We don't need a seminar, and we. No, I know that. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm just
I
saying.
do think it's important to you understand. I don't think you see what happens to get here.
Yeah, we do. And we've read all that's been submitted and from Tiffany, we understand. We've seen the timeline and all that. And I'm not being sarcastic. I'm just saying, we don't have time. But Katie is certainly welcome to submit anything she wants, and this board reads everything that's submitted. That's what I'm saying, okay?
Thank you, including all that you've submitted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Good evening, Katie.
Hi, sir.
If you would introduce yourself, and then I'll swear you in, please.
So I'm Catherine Maresca from SL Maresca Associates.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Go ahead, please.
I'll keep it short.
Yeah.
Part of the technical analysis memorandum asked us to look into these pressurized shallow drain fields. You guys didn't use the term pressurized, but a gravity shallow drain field will not fit on this site. It will not meet code. We had to go with pressurized. When we wanted the percolation test, the percolation rate is 40 minutes per inch. The worst rate you can get is 60 minutes per inch. So this is pretty bad percolation on this, pretty bad soils on this site. We would prefer to go with the wick system, especially in Montauk. The pressurized shallow drain field, although it doesn't require the excavation that the wick system requires, we feel there can be maintenance issues, failures we've heard of in the past, especially in Montauk with these clay fields. So we wouldn't be comfortable designing a system like that for the site.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions, board members?
The wick system that you're suggesting, what do we think that the proposed depth of that system would have to be for it to function?
It has to go to elevation -20. So we're up to elevation 51. So that's about a 60-foot depth.
And you have a reasonable expectation that the soil composition there will work at that depth, that you wouldn't have to go any further?
Yes, definitely. It's typically done in Montauk, so we wouldn't be concerned with that part of the design.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Thank you. Yeah, someone else. Yeah.
We're just gonna have Dan Thorpe address some of the landscaping, which is particularly the bamboo that I think was raised in the town.
Okay, good evening, Dan.
Good evening, Dan Thorpe with LaGuardia Design.
Go ahead and swear you in, Dan. Do you swear or affirm, if you raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Great.
So the only real response that we were tasked with addressing was the removal of the bamboo that's present on the site. There's an existing 400 or 500 square foot patch of tall, thick, lush bamboo sitting within an otherwise ecologically native landscape. We thought originally the town would respond favorably to us recommending its removal during construction. The machinery would already be on site digging the foundations for the home. So we thought it would be environmentally responsible to take away this wildly invasive plant and revegetate with native materials while we were there disturbing the site as part of the construction project. The town's response was that they would like to see the removal of the bamboo possibly phased in or separated out into a later application. We still feel like the bamboo is something that it makes all the sense in the world while we have a backhoe on site digging the foundation house to take out from the site and replace with native grasses and shrubs. So as it stands today, the application still shows the removal of the bamboo. It takes place in the footprint of the proposed shed area, as well as some of the grading that's required to build the septic system. The removal of the bamboo in its entirety could probably be tightened up, so we'd leave some of it in place and really just remove what we need to in order to build the shed and to grade for the septic system. But
how extensive is the bamboo? How extensive is it existing?
Well, we made our initial evaluation about 3 years ago, and so it's only grown since. So I would say it encapsulates about a 25 foot by 25 foot area near the current parking area, near the current parking portion of the driveway.
What would you consider?
That's all.
What would you consider the effort that would be necessary to remove the bamboo? What kind of excavation would you be making to completely eliminate it?
Well, you really have to remove the root mat of the bamboo. You have to cut the thatch. So you remove all of the bamboo shoots. Those are hauled off site. And then the root mass has to be removed down 24 to 30, sometimes 36 inches, depending on how deep it goes. And that would be removed off site. And then we would fill in that, that hole with a half and half mix of sand to smother the roots of the bamboo, and then the plant mix on top necessary to support plant life for the native tree vegetation. So not as easy as
3-foot depth excavation necessary to get the bamboo out.
2 to 3, depending on how deep the root mat goes. And I think that was the concern of the town. But again, it's a wildly invasive plant that's only going to get worse.
Well, thank you. Any
Okay.
questions? Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, you said about 500 square feet of bamboo. So and that's the entirety of the bamboo on the property? You had a different.
It constantly evolves. I think it's growing. So when we mapped it originally, it was about a 20 by 20, 20 by 25 foot area. That's highlighted on the existing conditions plan that was submitted.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll hear from the planning department. Good evening, Brian.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. Brian Frank, Chief Environmental Analyst for the Planning Department.
Thank you, Brian. I'll swear you in. Brian, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Rich, if you don't mind, I'm going to move your easel. Sure. If that's okay. Yeah. Okay. Otherwise, I'm going to knock it down. You know how graceful I am.
See you do it.
I'd like to show the board an aerial image of the property. Talk about some of its environmental attributes for a second. Oh man, I think I'm out of the Zoom meeting. Excuse me. I apologize on that.
Good.
So this is the subject property. As Rich Warren mentioned, it's improved with about a 1,000 square foot, one-story home. It had its last, and maybe I believe its only certificate of occupancy in 1969. And it really was just for the house and the deck. It doesn't include the sheds. So the idea that the coverage is being reduced by the application is a little bit misleading because none of the sheds appear to be legal. So removing structures that aren't really permitted there and calling it an environmental improvement is not accurate. So this is the property here. And I think everybody agrees that this is an area of extreme environmental sensitivity and significance. The wetlands, Rich did a very accurate job characterizing the wetlands. The wetlands in the eastern part of the property, western part of the property are for the most part contiguous to Shadmore State Park, where there are more extensive wetlands. There is an easement, an unimproved easement that separates the property from Shadmore, but it's essentially contiguous. The wetlands in the western portion of the property, although not I think the DEC made a mistake when they say they didn't regulate them, because I believe they did regulate them on the property to the south. But be that as it may, for this application, the wetlands, regardless of whether they're regulated by the DEC or not, are equally significant. They're extensive. They are a little bit fragmented by Seaside Avenue, but you know this area. This area is loaded with extensive wetlands. They're interconnected. There are streams within them. It's part of the Lake Montauk watershed. Rhinestein State Park is located to the south. So this is an area with extensive natural attributes, extensive protected open space. The property is non-conforming, obviously, to wetland setbacks. The existing house is non-conforming to side yard and presumably pyramid setbacks as well. The planning department maintains that the scale of the development is far too aggressive for the constraints of this for this property. The house at 2,700 or a little bit under is 1.5 times the square footage of the existing residence now. There's only a 9-foot increase basically in wetland setbacks. So the house is about 42 feet from the wetlands to the east. The proposed residence is 50 feet from the wetlands to the west rather. The new residence is about 50. It's non-conforming to the wetlands to the west. The variances that are required are fairly substantial. There's no protocol for the removal of the sheds. You see how overgrown this is. This application requires a tremendous amount of site disturbance to do everything that the applicant is talking about. They're talking about removing sheds that are within wetlands, demoing a house and foundation, digging out, Katie can, Ms. Maresca can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think to dig out and replace the sand, the unsuitable soils for the sanitary system. It's about 170 cubic yards of material that has to get removed and replaced with sand to have a functioning sanitary system that goes down to drain soils. There is the construction of the residence. There is a tremendous, I'll switch over to the survey in a moment, but you saw it on the screen before. There is a tremendous amount of regrading of the property on the eastern side of the property. And then there's the removal of the bamboo as a component to the application. So when you add everything up in terms of what's involved of removing what's on the property now and installing what's proposed, you're really tearing up a lot of the property. And this board has had a lot of experience with construction jobs that tend to take longer and sometimes go a little bit sideways. And given the sensitivity of this property, this is a concern. If this lot looks familiar to you, you saw it back when 69 Seaside across the street was redeveloped. They were proposing to use this lot as a staging area for what was taking down a small 1-story cottage, putting up a 1.5-story house and an IA sanitary system. And you remember that was going to be a very quick job because it was a kit house. Material was going to be brought to the property, pre-cut, pre-drilled, and assembled on site very, very fast. That's a very constrained property. That property ended up being overcleared. It needed to come back for modifications. I had to make multiple visits back to that property, meet with the new sanitary designing engineer because the groundwater elevation turned out to be inaccurate. It was in short a mess. It ended up being overcleared. That doesn't mean that that's going to happen on this lot, but it is an example of what can go wrong on a much smaller job, on a much smaller lot. This property objectively has a lot more moving parts associated with it than that project. I think there's going to be a lot more grading to level the top for the slab foundation than indicated on the plans. And then the inclusion of a 2nd-story swimming pool within a non-conforming building envelope is, will be precedent setting. If you're going to do it on this lot, you're going to have to do it on every property. Rich and Tiffany are correct to bring up the Stavola property to the south. And it's a good reminder that no bad decision is forgotten. And that is, there's an awful lot of examples of additions, reconstructions on Seaside Avenue. In my professional opinion, I'm very familiar with that property. That was respectfully one of the board's worst decisions that I can recall. It was a one-off. There are very few other, if any, examples like that. None of these board members were part of it. But if you start taking non-conforming building envelopes and squeezing in swimming pools in them, you're really lowering the bar for what's eligible for a variance. When you have a non-conforming lot, severely constrained, and I think everybody agrees that is, the primary goal needs to be locating the right size and the right location of a house and septic system. That's job one, not some other bells and whistles that are nice amenities. The swimming pool is not commensurate as a matter of right. It's not necessary for a residential zoning district. When it fits, it fits. When it's eligible for variances, it's eligible for variances. But if you do it under these circumstances, you're really going to have a hard time not doing it anywhere, pretty much everywhere else. Not just in Seaside Avenue, but any place you look at wetland setback variances, which are all over town. Even the removal of the bamboo. The bamboo is about 2,500 square foot right now. We've seen these stands of bamboo. It's probably one of the varieties of running bamboo, they call them. They really do spread. They are a menace. You can take a look at GIS aerials through the county, and you'll see that this I think it was in 2010 or 2013. This stuff didn't even show up. So what you see here now is really just a product of 10 years of it, basically cloning itself, going off of rhizomes, and it is a problem, and there is merits to removing it. But considering what's involved with the property, the right way to handle the removal of the bamboo is to do whatever you're going to do with the property, build it, get a certificate of occupancy, close out that open permit, make sure that other mitigation measures are properly implemented, and then attack this separately. It's the same as when we've seen, it's the same recommendation the planning department is making when people want to couple Phragmites removal with redevelopment. It's a project in and of itself. It requires regular maintenance. It's not a one-shot deal. And as Dan told you, it is a little bit invasive. You got to go in there and you got to dig it out. If you don't get it all, it's coming back. This property was acquired in 2016 with knowledge of the wetlands either already provided or at least available to the owner. The principals of the LLC in this property are experienced with Ditch Plains properties. This is not their first wetland application. This is not the only property that they either have or currently own, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with owning multiple properties here. But certainly the involved parties have experience with this area. They have experience with the town zoning code. They have experience with the town's wetland laws. And they really had the opportunity to know what the limitations of this property were when they purchased it. I think you really have to look at a smaller footprint with a basement as a reasonable alternative. If you can't do a basement, maybe you can at least do a crawl. Having a separate storage area, having a storage area is understandable. There has to be a way to work that in to a better wetland setback than what's currently proposed. The sanitary, if I can switch over to the, look, I have a lot of respect for Maresca Engineering. I obviously have a lot more familiarity with Steve than I do Katie, but I find her bright, competent. Oh gosh, I didn't switch the image over.
The fruit doesn't fall far from the tree there.
But with all due respect, this amount of grading is unacceptable. We've never seen this before in a sanitary design on Seaside Avenue before. Rich was 100% right when he talked about the poor drainage of the soil. You cannot protect the wetlands to the east with this level of grading in this proximity to it. You're changing the runoff too much. You're changing the slopes. You're changing the rate and volume of runoff in a way that is just not historically compatible with what this wetland is receiving now. This is just, I understand, like I said, I understand the engineering behind it, or I should say I respect the engineering behind it. This does not come anywhere close to meeting the town's natural resource special permit standards. I do want to mention a little bit about the history here. I did have a fairly lengthy conversation with Emily Rabb, who was an employee of Inner Science at the time back in 2017 before the application was submitted. We spoke a lot about the property. We spoke about roughly the concept of a 2,400 square foot house with a 50-foot setback from the wetlands to the west as being conceptually acceptable. The idea of that driveway was ridiculous. The amount of invasiveness and fragmentation tearing through the density of the vegetation that you saw in Members Yohan's photo was foolish. We did discuss the swimming pool, but frankly, we discussed it briefly because as I mentioned, the primary issue in a redevelopment is what is commensurate with a residential zoning district, a house, a sanitary system, and a driveway. There's no reason to talk about the swimming pool at any great length. I have a certain obligation to participate in calls like this and to provide feedback when I can. If it makes for a better application, it's good for everybody. It's less work for me. It's better for the applicant. It's good for the board. But with respect to Rich's chronology of what he has told you, we have consistently worked backward from a very aggressive, ambitious plan to a slightly less aggressive, very ambitious plan. That middle proposal had a 14-foot high retaining wall. So yeah, the part of the conversation that we had back in June was you got to get rid of that retaining wall. I was asked to take a look at 3 sanitary systems and provide some feedback about which of the designs might be the best suited to the lot, and I did that. But I have to tell you that in no uncertain terms did I ever give the impression that the application was really well on track to something that the planning department wouldn't object to, and that I'll stand emphatically by it. I reviewed my notes from my meeting with Emily. I reviewed my notes from my conference call with Tiffany and Mike last year in June. Mr. Powers was on that call as well. I know what was said. I know it was discussed, and I'm not too mousy about sharing concerns. So the idea that a lot. Nothing in the assessment really should be a surprise, except the fill around the sanitary system, because that was in the last iteration. That was really the only thing new. This is a 2-story flat roofed house. It is right up against the pyramid law. You know the moorland habitat. It's all short trees and shrubs. You should look at the elevation plans and determine if a structure like that on the highest point on the lot is going to loom over the neighbors and have a change on the character of the neighborhood.
If I could just interject, because it's pertinent for a second here, Brian, with regard to what you're speaking of about the pyramid, the height on the plans, they're showing grade at 42.5 feet, and we all know that the height parameters are based on existing grade, not proposed grade. And clearly on the survey, on the northeast corner of the house, there's a 38-foot contour line. So these plans should be adjusted to allow for that 38, where grade is not at 42.5. It looks like very close to me that corner is at 38 feet.
For whatever reason, I have the elevation plans here, but they don't have the pyramid line on them. I don't know if it's a computer.
No, I'm looking at the architect's plans. And
right.
Grade 42.5 feet.
There may be another cross section that shows that 38.
I'm seeing the pyramid.
Okay, I really,
And then there's pyramid diagrams. I'm not talking about the pyramid, I'm talking about the height regula. And I'm not really talking to you, I'm just.
no, I understand.
So they know that these should be.
Let me state the obvious then. A smaller footprint is going to be farther, it's not going to be as hard up against that pyramid line no matter what. It might allow for the sanitary system in the house to be located side by side and eliminate the need for that grading, which is,
Yeah, and as well.
again, in a site like this, just because the wetlands in the eastern part of the property are not regulated by the DEC, it doesn't mean that you can really have this extent of disturbance and it's acceptable.
Right, just to make sure clear, my point was about the height of the building, not the pyramid, actually, because they're showing it at 4.5.
Okay.
They're basing their height off that, and it should be 4 feet lower, 4.5 feet lower, but continue, please.
I think that's pretty much it. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Easy question, back to the bamboo. You said there's 2,500 square feet of bamboo.
That's what I estimated using the recent aerial and the measuring tool, about 2,500.
The applicant was talking about removing about 500 or 600 feet.
Well, I think they measured it. I'll let them address that. But again, knowing that the redevelopment of this property has got a lot of issues. There are wetlands on both sides of the property. There are poorly drained soils. There are non-conforming structures. Get something approved, built, and closed out before you open a whole nother front of work. Otherwise, this could be a torn up job site for 5 years. And, it's hard to protect the natural resources when you do that.
Thank you, Brian. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you very much, Brian. Okay, do we have anyone in the public who wishes to speak? Yes? Well, come on up, please. And again, if you're not an attorney, I will have to swear you in.
Yep, my name is John Chimpkins.
And your
I
address?
am not an attorney.
Okay, and your address for the record?
12 Miller Avenue, around the corner from the property in question.
Okay, thank you. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, good evening.
Hi. So we live on Miller Avenue, and the locals have called Miller Avenue River Road from time to time.
Can you just point out for us where that is roughly on it with regard to this?
So it's right over there.
Okay.
All the water from Shadmore, if I'm not mistaken, Brian, from Shadmore.
Speaking to the microphone.
Oh, yes.
You address the board, yeah.
The water from Shadmore, all from Rita Stables, from all that area funnels down, goes across the north side of Miller Avenue, and some on the south side, in front of the houses on the south side of Miller, to what we call Penny's Pond, the pond Larry Penny had constructed on the west side of the first parking lot of Ditch Plains, through Ditch Plains and all the septics to the south end of the lake. You guys probably all know this. Our biggest concern is the how this construction will affect that flow. Because right now, there's a pool at the bottom of the driveway that goes down Seaside, crosses over to Miller, okay? My point.
You can go up there. You just speak loudly, maybe.
So it pools here. It's probably on Stavolo's old lot. Comes down here, goes across here to this property, which you guys discussed before. Goes all the way down here. My property is here. Goes through under a culvert. What happens to Miller is when it rains heavily, it floods completely. Hasn't happened for a little while, but it happens from time to time. And I was going to show you guys at least.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. So our biggest concern is, well, there are several concerns. What the water flow will be once the project is finished. And as importantly, especially if there are some concerns about the duration of construction, what's going to happen during that construction, and what happens with a lot of the construction. It happened on the opposing corner. all the construction trucks come down Miller. And during one of the constructions, either there or at 23, the culvert under Miller collapsed, flooding my property and the properties to the west. So there's great concern from our end as to how that flow is going to be mitigated and controlled during construction, and certainly once the construction and revegetation is completed. My other question is there a mechanism within the town to guarantee that any revegetation is completed as proposed? Is that a code enforcement thing, or I don't know how that works?
Revegetation?
Yeah, if it's there, they have a plan for revegetating the lot, who makes sure that gets done?
That gets done by the town.
It all gets controlled. Okay. Right. So that's it. The rest of it, I don't know the ins and outs of the non-conforming and the grade changes and all that. We're really concerned with the end product and how it affects the flow, and certainly the effects it has during construction.
Thank you for coming out. Thanks. Appreciate it. Anyone else here?
Hello.
Good evening.
My name is John Alters. And I live at 22 Miller.
Okay, great, John. Unless you're an attorney, I'll swear you in.
No, I'm not an attorney.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, so I'm here because I'm not just a neighbor, but I'm a big fan of Shadmore Park and the hoodoos and the cliffs that surround the area. And I'm sure that most of you have taken that walk along the beach where you see these beautiful cliffs. And so if you just can indulge me for a second, I just want to read a few paragraphs that I wrote. But we do live next door to Cynthia and Bill, and they just built that new place. And I think Richard mentioned that the house that they're building, they're proposing to build now, is for Cynthia and Bill and their two children. But the fact of the matter is, when they presented the construction of the house next to us, they proposed that they were building a house for their two daughters. So I'm not sure if they're building this new house for Cynthia and Bill and their two daughters. I don't know what's going to happen to that other house, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay, just so you know, you have 3 minutes total, and
This, I think I can.
you can submit this to us.
I think I can blow through this pretty quickly.
Okay.
All right. I think we can all agree that one of the things that makes Montauk so darn appealing is the unspoiled beauty that makes this town beauty that this town has been able to maintain, thanks in part to people like you. I would make the argument that Shadmore Park, which belongs to all of us, with its towering cliffs that we are so blessed to be able to appreciate every time we stroll down that section of the beach, is one of the most unique and beautiful spots in all of Montauk. Walk to the top through its winding trails, where in certain places we can marvel at the vistas both east towards those wonderful Seven Sisters houses dotting the hills, or west, where you can swear the trails and beaches stretch all the way back to the city where everybody tries to get away from, even if it's just for the weekend. This plan, which calls for the clearing of vegetation in a large house and the addition of a pool, which sit near the eastern descending slope of Shadmore, has the potential to disturb the natural flow over the wetlands and hinder the wetlands' ability to absorb all the storms that we famously get on a regular basis. If you walk around our street, you will notice many active streams, and our house is directly across from the previous construction. There is a stream that separates our property, and we notice on the new property that they're proposing, there's also a marsh area that we see often, very often during either rains or when the snow is melting from the parks and it's coming down, and it's all a very active waterway or whatever it is. I'm not an expert. I don't know how any of this works.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask you if you could submit that. You can. We're not closing the written record, so if you could please submit that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay, because we have. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Chair,
Anyone else?
Chair, how long are you leaving it open for?
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Yes, sure. 3 minutes, but I just can't let one person. Yeah.
My name is Karen Thorson, and I live at 12 Miller Avenue.
Thanks. Good evening. Oh, you're an attorney? No? Okay. Good evening. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I'm in favor of them building a house. I want them to have a great house, and I want them to have the house that they want. My only concern is the water flow, which John Chimple spoke about, but also the effluent issue, obviously the sanitary. That's obviously got to be really careful because that water goes everywhere, and it's, we're walking in our bare feet in the road. It doesn't get taken away.
Well, you understand if this were, or something like this is approved, it's a wick that goes straight down.
Yes, I understand. I understand. So I obviously support the most conservative measure.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, thank you for coming out. Anyone else in the public? Yes.
I'm Liz Alters, 22 Miller. I'm not an attorney.
Okay, good evening. And do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. So one other thing I'd like to bring up is just light pollution, which some of the newer constructions have a lot of windows. And it was mentioned that 69 was over excavated. And we have the result of all the light coming into our house from that. And that should also be a consideration for this house, as it's going to sit very high. And then it would, affect the park, people walking through town, and people on the beach. If that could be taken.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate it. Anyone else in the public? No? Okay. I think we spent far too much time on this than allowable. So I don't really, Richard, typically we give you a quick one sentence sum up or something. I don't know if there's anything else. Or Tiffany, I'm sorry, but you see we've given us a lot of time. Go ahead.
Yes, given the extensive technical analysis, we appreciate the time that was given. We are going to be submitting additional documentation in writing in response to some of the things that were submitted this evening. However, the board sees fit to do that, whether you'd want to table this and keep it open or close the hearing. Written comments, that's up to you.
Right. And you'll take into account everything that we discussed.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We may want to keep this open. It could be, yeah, I just think that, there's a lot going on. And the house is going to be redesigned because of the elevations and other things, and there's more submissions. Some other people may want to come out and comment. That's my opinion.
Right, and as far as timing is concerned, it was just.
That's up to you.
We were going to ask for
us.
2 months probably is.
And if you need more, you can ask for more. Is that what you'd like us to go with for now?
Yes.
2 months? Okay. Terry, your comments, your opinion, or Ed, I'm sorry?
No, I'm happy with the additional 2 months. I think a lot of issues have been raised. I think there's more conversation to be had here. And I'm happy to support the notion of this.
Yeah, and do you agree we continue the public hearing?
I continue.
We can't continue a public hearing with open-ended without having to notice it. If you know of a date that you want to rehear it.
Thank you, Council.
Otherwise, we'll have to renotice it. Do you need the record open, or do you need?
Not keeping the application open-ended. Once you open a public hearing, you're able to adjourn that public hearing, keep that public hearing open. Really for as long, really
allowed to one session.
Really for as long as the board would like to keep that hearing open. There's no time limit either prescribed in the town code or in New York state law
I didn't say that. What I said was that we cannot just adjourn the hearing. It will have to be renoticed if we keep it open. And I'm asking the board whether or not that they would like to keep it open because it would need to be renoticed unless we have a specific date. So we can renotice it.
It would not have to be renoticed.
Okay.
That's
So
a difference.
if you have a specific date 2 months from now, it would not have to be renoticed, Nancy Lynn?
If we are adjourning it specifically for a date, are we keeping the record open for 2 months? Are we doing the hearing, second half of the
I think we
hearing?
should leave the record because I think some people this evening might have, or at home may want to submit.
You want to keep the hearing open, correct?
Both, that's what I'm recommending.
So do you want a second hearing date?
I think we should.
I think we do.
Right, it would be
That's
2
what I'm
months.
asking.
Yeah, so we have,
2 months would be October 26th.
do we have a hearing that night?
We do have, it is a public hearing night.
And do we have a slot? I guess we haven't scheduled that.
We haven't scheduled that far in advance.
So in other words, that would work, council?
That's fine.
So that you are adjourning, so you're adjourning it specifically to that date
Right.
and it would appear in the minutes.
Okay, great, great. And do we all agree with that, board members?
October 26th.
Okay, Terry, you want to make that, I mean, Ed, I'm sorry, you want to make that motion?
Making a motion to do what?
To adjourn the public hearing until October 26th and leave the written and record open as well.
In the matter of 376 Bleecker Street, LLC, at 78 Seaside Avenue, to the county tax map 300-034-07-23.1. I'd like to make a motion to have the hearing open until October 26th, and leave the written record open as well.
And it's to continue the public hearing on that date.
The public hearing, October 26th.
Concur. And I concur. Okay, thank you all.
See ya.
Yeah, once we get over. Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay, we'll continue here next. We have, under the work session, both sharing decisions. We have Robert De Niro at 242 Old Montauk Highway and Montauk Tax Map number 300-87-3-6. Lot size, Council, do I have to read all of this in? I guess.
No, this is just this.
Okay, great. Okay, Brian here, could you come up, Brian? Yeah. So we have here 2 items to attend to. Do you want to just review what we're doing here, Brian, with regard to the extension and?
It's not for the extension of time, no. There were 2,
No, it's our decision for the, go ahead, Council.
this originally came to the board, and we had a hearing on it with regards to modifying the original approval
Yeah.
to match the as-built. And in the process of that hearing, it was discovered that there was a need for a variance. So the hearing reopened, and we noticed, and we had a rehearing on the variance for the pool equipment.
Yeah.
So what's before you now is the application, which is the as-built as well as the new variance.
Yep. Okay, so go ahead, Terry, this is, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I didn't realize we were gonna be this late. I'm sorry, I'm on duty in
Yeah,
45 minutes and he's off. So
Thanks, Brian.
Mike is gonna stand in for me and you get as much as you can of him on his last night.
Joy.
Last.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
Darts at.
No, to the stairs going to the pool area. The path from the pool and beach, will remain standing path. When they took the stone wall at the driveway from which the railroad ties and grass was into the beach, was expanded to block off that previous vehicular access to the beach. And they say it intercepts the runoff that comes down the bluff to the north of the house, so it keeps it from running down to the beach. The third thing was for a generator that was added to the southwest area next to the garage. And that they were proposing to revegetate and expand the vegetation and plant in front of it. A lot of that revegetation was started, and the applicant for the agent for the applicant, Pamela Berger, the architect, subsequent to that, did send us some updated photos. She was concerned about some of the revegetation. She did send us some photos after that showing how some of this was growing in. And then the fourth thing was, as council said, came up during the modification hearing. And it was the pool equipment enclosure. Original determination had nothing that was going to be done at the pool. Ultimately, what happened was the applicant did change. They changed the pool, I guess, from a chlorine system to a salt water, and in doing so, they had a new pool pump, and all of that caused the pool equipment enclosure. They turned it. It was originally 6 by 10, but when they turned it and made it 4 by 12, it put it 2 feet closer to the toe of the bluff.
Yep.
So requiring the variance. We had a hearing about that. And basically, I'm in favor of approving this, the modification, and the additional 2-foot variance for the pool equipment.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Terry. Roy?
I agree that recommend approval of this. So, I think the variance is minimal, and I think it's reasonable what their request is. Therefore, I do agree with number 3.
Thank you. Tim?
I agree as well.
Ed?
Yeah, I agree. I think that I think eliminating that former roadway down to the beach and diverting the water where it was is a significant improvement in protection for that area. And I think that was not an excessive request on their part, so I'm in favor of approving it as well.
Okay, thank you, Ed. I agree with all of my board members' comments, with nothing to add on this. I would approve this as well. Council, we good on that?
Yes,
I
I
just
just,
make a comment. The variance is.
the variance was a 97.6 foot variance, so I don't know if minimal, but it was a minimal change
It
from
was
what
minimal
had
change
existed.
From what it had been.
Yeah.
27.4 feet from the bluff now.
Yeah.
I've been
So
approved.
it is a substantial one.
My point was that it was
Reasonable.
Reasonable, yes.
Which I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure was
sure.
okay. if I-
So for the writing, yeah. Thanks,
I think it
Anthony.
was also mitigated by showing.
With that clarification, I'm all set.
Okay, great. Okay, next we have, other decisions. We have Zedlovich at 143 Isle of Wight Road in Springs, tax map number 300-23-1-16.1. And board member Deline has okayed a public hearing for this requested modification for a
No,
determination.
he's making a motion.
He's making it, okay. Sorry.
Therefore, I would like to make a motion, Mr.
Chairman for
Zedlovich at 143
Isle of Wight.
Road in Springs,
Tax map number
300-23-01-16.1 to proceed to hearing for a notification.
I concur.
I concur.
I concur. Thanks, Roy. Then next we go to Michael Carrazza at 421 Sag Harbor Turnpike, East Hampton, tax map number 300-156-5-10.3. Mr. Carrazza has been in touch with our attorney, Nancy Lynn Field, and he has requested to keep the record open. do we don't, is there a motion on that, or we just determine, just go around the board?
And we do need a motion to keep it open because, when you finished the public hearing, we kept it open for, a couple weeks, for something else. So he would like to keep, not only keep the record open, but he's asking that the public hearing portion be reopened. It will need to be renoticed because it was not to a specific date. But he's asking to keep both the public hearing, allow that to be reopened, and keep the record open because he wants to, my understanding is, I'll have to get in, but the purpose of it would be to put in a request to modify his application to include a variance to allow him to keep the pool house as built.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy Lynn. Tim, would you like to make a motion?
Was it closed already? Wasn't it just last week?
Yes.
Yes, last week.
It was, and it would be closing in the next 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I put it on now because we don't have meetings for the next 2 weeks.
Oh, right.
I didn't want it to close and then
Tim, if you don't, I'll take that, being that you were here, if you want me to make a motion, you're welcome to make a motion.
No, I did watch.
Oh, you watched it and you're good.
I watched it, so I'm good with doing that. And just so I'm clear, am I reopening the public hearing? Because I believe.
Yes.
the Public hearing.
We have to reopen the public hearing and it will be renoticed, but to reopen the public hearing for a later date that will be noticed and keep the record open as well.
So no specific date.
We don't have a specific date yet, no.
Okay, so in the matter of Michael Carrazza at 421 Sag Harbor Turnpike, East Hampton, tax map number 300-156-5-10.3. I make a motion to reopen the public hearing and to keep it open along with the written record with the agreement that the entire application will be renoticed at some point in the future.
I'll second that.
I concur.
And I concur as well. Thank you, Tim. Okay, next we have 15 Crooked Highway LLC. Pardon me, this is at 15 Crooked Highway, East Hampton, tax map number 300-112-1-2.5. And Tim, this is in your East Hampton. I have that here.
And I think it's just, it's on for an extension of time, not under building permit C of O. I think there was a little confusion there.
Yeah.
So what we're looking for is an extension of time on that.
It's under both.
It's under both. I know, but it doesn't need a motion for a C of O.
The C of O has effectively already been signed off on. It's just waiting for the extension of time to catch up with it so they can issue it, the paperwork.
Did everyone get that from Michael, the C of O? Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Has already signed off on the certificate of occupancy on the property, but the permit had lapsed at that time. So they need to get an extension to keep the permit valid so that they can actually get their CF.
Okay, in that case, I'll make a motion to approve the extension of time for 15 Crooked Highway LLC at 15 Crooked Highway, East Hampton, tax map number 300-112-1-2.5.
And we'll have that ready for a resolution for adoption at the next meeting.
Okay, let's just continue. I made the motion.
Second.
Concur? I'll concur.
And I concur.
Okay, perfect.
Great. Okay, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Nancy Lynn. We'll see that next week or in 2 weeks after our 2-week break.
Yep.
Okay, next we have under extensions of time, we have Beckman at 94 South Euclid Avenue in Montauk, tax map number 300-49-1-14. And this is Eric Chances and Michael is.
Yeah, just covering it for him briefly. This is a joint planning board, zoning board application. The zoning board side of it was for parking variances for the parking requirements to be on the property. It's vacant property as is, nothing's been issued. They're continuing to work through their site plan process, but it has been assured by Eric that that doesn't change the magnitude of the variance request that they're trying to sort out with the planning board. This will be their first extension.
And this is in Terry's, Terry took this, yeah.
Yeah, so I do have Eric's memo also. This was originally a determination back in 11/29/2017.
Yeah.
And so I make a motion for Beckman at 94 South Euclid Avenue, Montauk, tax map 300-049-1-14 to allow the extension time.
I'll second it.
Concur?
And I concur as well. Thanks, Terry. Next, we have the minutes for August 17th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion. I read those. Make a motion to approve the minutes for August 17th for the East Hampton.
I concur.
I'm going to abstain because I'm not attend.
I concur as well. Thank you. Okay, now we'll go to the resolutions. Okay, first, we have Nina Antonu and John Devaney, and this is at 49 Sammy's Beach Road. I'm going to give this to Board Member Brenneman. Tim, if you would, please.
Sure. Members, you recall this was the application on Sammy's Beach Road. It was a cleanup application which included the bluestone patio being removed, the approval of bluestone walkway around the house, a shed that was built within NRSP, and then also a bluestone walkway from the parking area to the home. We were all in an agreement in our approval, so I will make a motion in the matter of Tina Antonu and John Devaney at 49 Sandwich Beach Road in East Hampton, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-56-1-18 to approve the determination as written.
I'll second.
Concur.
And I concur as well. Thanks, Tim. Next, we have Andrew Foglia and Molly Nolan at 22 South Geneva Court. Oh, that's it, sorry. Ed, you want to handle that, please?
Very well, thank you. The board will remember that this was an application for a new residence, construction on a highly sensitive lot. We had discussions about the implications of the construction would have on the wetlands that were to the north and its effect on the lake. There was a discussion about what we might ask them to offer as mitigation. One of the things that they did was to volunteer to remove all of the bamboo, which was extensive on the southern part of the property, also to revegetate on the eastern side an area that was overcleared apparently by a neighbor. And additionally, they agreed to certain controls like putting a split rail fence along the edge of the maximum development so there would be no encroachment as they move forward. They reduced slightly the size of the house and they were willing to covenant the garage to never be turned into living space. We were all in approval on this, and we wish them well. And I would like therefore to make a motion in the matter of Andrew Folia and Molly Nolan at 22 South Geneva Court, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-028-03-13 to accept the resolution as written.
Concur. I concur.
And I concur as well. Okay, next we have Marshall J. Clark at 29 Sayers Path in Wainscott, and Tim, Board Member Brenneman, handle that. Tim.
Sure. Yep, and the board will recall this was a matter relating to a garage, rather unique situation in that there was a prior zoning board approval of a garage in a very similar size in basically the same exact area. It did have a significant variance, but given the uniqueness of this application, we were all unanimous in our approval. And so I will make a motion in the matter of Marshall Gluck at 29 Sayers Path, Wainscott, tax map number 300-197-3-60 to accept the determination as written.
Okay. And I concur as well. Thanks, Tim. Finally, we have Henry C. Smither at 63 Soundview Drive in Montauk. And Terry, that was you, please.
Sorry.
Okay, so this was, to construct a new house of 2,668 square feet at 63 Soundview Drive in Montauk. It is an unimproved lot. It is currently an unimproved lot. And this was a modular home that required a very small height variance of 0.7 feet. If you recall, that was due to a lower depression on the northern side of the property. It's a modular home. And we approved this unanimously. So in the matter of Henry Smither, tax map 300-5-2-3, located at 63 Sandview Drive in Montauk, and make a motion to approve the resolution as written.
Second.
Concur.
I concur.
And I concur as well. Thanks, Terry. Okay, I think that's it. Council, anything else?
That's it. I have nothing further on our agenda.
Okay, then Vice Chair, we need a motion if we can.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to close the public hearing, the work session of the County Zoning Board of Appeals, Tuesday, August 24th.
Concur, I concur.
I concur. Thank you all.
Good.
Bye, Michael.
Bottle of champagne for Mike.